Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, the series kicks off with several men aboard Navy ships, surveying a nearby island, all stating that their weapons have no chance against mysterious enemies. Heading onto the island, we follow several hunters facing the mysterious enemies, a swarm of monster red ants. As the frontline hunters work together, they attempt to physically stall the red ants, all whilst other hunters barrage the ants with spells. But sadly, the hunters are ultimately overrun by the swarm. As they all begin begging for their lives, the hunters all note how they are far too low level to be facing such powerful creatures. But just then, Byung-gu, a S-rank healer, arrives. As Byung-gu begins healing the injured, Yun-seok, wielding lightning magic, and Yunho, wielding martial arts skills, begin clearing the area of the swarm of red ants. Amazed that the three S-rank hunters were easily able to save them, everyone suddenly senses a greater white ant monster appear, prompting Yun-seok and Yunho to volunteer to defeat the monster, all whilst Byung-gu continues to treat the injured. With both S-rank adventurers dashing towards the white ant, Yunho chooses to wrestle with the creature, giving Yun-seok enough time to prepare a powerful lightning spell, perfectly striking the white ant from behind. As the creature is temporarily paralyzed, Yunho rips off the white ant's two front-facing fangs, leaping back, only to launch one of the torn-off fangs at the white ant, easily carving a hole in the creature's torso with his projectile. With no time to breathe, both S-rank hunters spot swarms of white ants approaching their location, forcing Yunho to awaken his berserker mode and Yun-seok to unleash simultaneous waves of lightning. Cutting to a nearby town on the same island, we spot Guildmaster Choi rally several other hunters in town, all standing off against a swarm of ants. Channeling a single flame spell, Choi signals the start of their raid on the ants, easily incinerating the weaker red ants, only to order his guild to begin attacking the greater white ants. Apparently, 10 years ago, several gates had begun appearing out of nowhere, allowing powerful monsters deemed magic beasts to appear. Seeing as conventional military weapons were useless against these magic beasts, it was discovered that humans began awakening with powers and skills that could rival the appearance of these magic beasts. These people were called hunters. Once a hunter had awakened, they would be given a rank from rank S to rank E, and sadly, once someone has awakened, there would be no way of improving one's rank no matter how hard they trained. Cutting to the present day, 3 years later, we see a Mr. Kim sipping on some coffee in preparation for a raid only to greet Park. Mr. Kim learns that Park's wife has recently gotten pregnant again, explaining Park's reason for attending their raid today, as he hopes to earn some extra cash for the family. Just then, our MC, Sung Jinwoo, arrives, greeting everyone as everyone is clearly happy to hear that Jinwoo is here. Seeing the attention Jinwoo is getting, Park asks Mr. Kim if Jinwoo is absurdly strong. But Mr. Kim corrects Park, stating that Jinwoo had been deemed the weakest adventurer ever to be discovered. And the reason everyone is happy is because they know any raid Jinwoo partakes in will be easy for them. Cutting over to Jinwoo, we see him holding the sadness from overhearing Mr. Kim and Park gossip about his weak status, but suddenly bumps into Juhee, happy to be working with her again. Cutting Jinwoo off, Juhee demands to know why Jinwoo is so covered in scars. But as they sit down, Juhee helplessly listens as Jinwoo recounts his latest raid on an E-rank dungeon, blaming himself for not being strong enough to avoid being hurt. Before Juhee can say anything, they are both called to have a group meeting. Introducing himself as Song Cheol, Song states that he will be leading their raid, since he is the most highly ranked out of their party. With the meeting over, everyone begins making their way over to a portal, all heading in one by one, leaving only Jinwoo left. Taking out a blade he was barely able to afford, Jinwoo takes a deep breath, gripping his blade tight, only to head through the portal. Elsewhere, we follow an old man, Go Gun-hee, chatting with one of his employees, mentioning how the items collected upon slaying magic beasts are known as essence stones. Cutting back to Jinwoo, we see that he has managed to slay a magic beast by himself, acquiring an essence stone, but is caught off guard when a goblin sneaks up on him. Able to dodge the goblin's advances, Jinwoo goes in for a strike, but his blade shatters upon impact, leaving Jinwoo wide open for the goblin to stab him. Seeing Jinwoo in trouble, Park runs over to slay the goblin, heading back to help the rest of the group with other monsters. All whilst Juhee is forced to stop Jinwoo from bleeding out. As Jinwoo lies on the floor, he admires Song's magnificent skills, but just then we cut back to Go Gunny talking more about the uses of essence stones. Go Gunny states that stones acquired from slaying magic beasts allow powerful weapons to be crafted, but similar things can be done to mana crystals collected from dungeon raids. Most importantly, Go Gunny states that the government is attempting to harvest energy from these mana and essence crystals, hopefully discovering a brand new way of acquiring energy. Back with Jinwoo, we see that his party had managed to deal with the swarm of monsters and the dungeon's boss, but Jinwoo notices Juhee's serious look. Juhee states that she is seriously worried for Jinwoo, not wanting him to push himself into dangerous situations. Just then, one of their party members points out that there is a tunnel that leads somewhere, catching everyone's attention as they suspect that this may be a double dungeon. Since the party wasn't able to acquire that much loot from their current dungeon, several people reason that they should be able to acquire extra loot, but the group leader Song wants to make sure everyone is on board. Upon taking a vote, Song counts 6 votes for continuing into the second dungeon and 6 votes against, leading only Jinwoo's vote. Thinking about his current situation, Jinwoo reveals that his father had gone missing, his mother is currently hospitalized, and his sister is about to enter college soon. Since he is the only one that can work, Jinwoo votes for entering the second dungeon. Cutting to Guild Master Choi in his massive building, we see him mentioning a hunter by the name of Cha Hae-in. But just then, right outside his building, we see 2 thieves steal a lady's handbag, fleeing on a motorcycle. Before the thieves can escape, Cha Hae-in appears, easily retrieving the stolen bag, only to leap away to avoid being swarmed, having become famous from being a S-rank hunter. Back with Jinwoo and his party, we see him apologizing to Juhee, always thankful for a B-rank hunter like Juhee being there for him, but sees that Juhee is clearly mad at Jinwoo for voting to explore the dungeons. Since dungeons close after a dungeon's boss is defeated, the party note how they have around 20 minutes to spare, but Juhee is pissed that Jinwoo is always putting his life in danger. But to make up for it, she demands Jinwoo take her out for a meal, as a thanks for always taking care of him. Just then, the gang encounter a huge set of intimidating doors, but holding back their fear, they venture onwards. As they enter a massive room, they notice the room automatically light up, spotting various statues littered around the edge of the room. Seeing a massive statue in particular, everyone begins wondering what the challenge of this dungeon could be. But as they begin inspecting the room more, they stumble upon some writing in the room. With the leader's song reading out the commandments of the Kartinon Temple, the commandments state that they must fear, praise, and prove their faith to God, or else they will not leave alive. Just then, the room's doors slam shut, prompting one of their group members to get freaked out, stating that they will personally be leaving. Before the group member can reach the doors, one of the statues suddenly moves, instantly decapitating the group member, leaving everyone in shock. Trying to digest the situation, Jinwoo notes how the group member that was instantly killed was at least D rank. And seeing as that single statue was able to move, Jinwoo turns around to observe the massive statue behind them, breathing heavily as the statue's eyes suddenly glares at him. Having survived death many times, Jinwoo had learned to survive with the most minimal of equipment, and instead rely on his instincts. Sensing something from the statue's eyes, Jinwoo cries for everyone to get down, right as the statue's eyes shoot a powerful beam at everyone in the party. With another one of their members incinerated, everyone begins to beg for their life, all whilst Jane racks his brain to figure out how to survive. Seeing that the giant statue has ceased its attacks, several group members state that they should all make a run for it while they still can, but Song orders everyone to stay still, not wanting to provoke the statues. Turning to Jinwoo, Song commends Jinwoo's senses. As if it was not for Jinwoo alerting everyone to the giant statue's eyes, everyone would have been dead. Grateful for the thanks, Jinwoo realizes that Song has lost one of his arms, so the least he could do is help Song stop the bleeding. Seeing Juhee so shaken up, Song reveals that the reason a B-rank hunter like Juhee only participates in low dungeon raids is sadly due to her weak mental state to violence. Additionally, Song mentions how although he too has participated in several B-rank dungeon raids himself, he has never faced such a powerful creature like the giant statue, suspecting the creature of being S-rank. Sitting down and re-evaluating their clues carved onto the stone, Song and Jinwoo wonder if the god they must worship, pray, and believe is the giant statue before them. At the same time, Jinwoo's sister, Jaina, chats with her friend at school, who is curious about Jinwoo, wondering why a hunter like him is always so injured. With no current plan, Song and Jinwoo agree that they should wait a bit longer to hopefully see something change. At that moment, one of the party members begins to break, stating that he had recently signed with a prestigious guild and that he doesn't want to die now. Encasing himself with a wind spell, the hunter dashes towards the gate, confident that he'll make it. But instantly, the hunter is vaporized. Disgusted to see another party member helplessly die, Jinwoo wonders why the statues don't just slaughter them, suddenly realizing something. Remembering that the first commandment from the stone is to worship God, Jinwoo begins to slowly stand up, but Song demands Jinwoo not do anything foolish. Upon seeing Jinwoo's determined eyes, Song allows Jinwoo to proceed, prompting Jinwoo to continue to stand up, only to immediately duck and bow his head upon spotting the giant statue's eyes light up. With everyone curious about what just happened, Jinwoo suspects that the giant statue only attacks people when they reach a certain height, therefore they should all bow to the giant statue. Seeing as everyone has bowed their heads, Jinwoo peeks to see the statue's eyes, relieved that the eyes have turned off, but instead the statue dons a terrifying grin. With nothing else happening, everyone notices that they are now allowed to stand up, exciting the party, but Jinwoo notes something is off. Just then, the giant statue stands up, slowly marching towards the members, all whilst holding its terrifying smirk. Thinking about the second commandment, Jinwoo racks his brain on ways to praise God. But out of nowhere, one of the party members suggests that they praise God through words, choosing to kneel before and recite a prayer. As everyone watches as the statue slowly approaches the knelt-down hunter, they all are forced to watch as the giant statue mercilessly stomps on the knelt-down hunter, following up by killing another frightened hunter. Seeing as it is too dangerous to stick together, everyone splits up, prompting Jinwoo to grab hold of the frightened Juhee, dragging her with him. Following Park, we see that he has made it towards the edge of the dungeon, thinking about how he still has a loving wife and kids that he must return to, but sadly one of the night statues cleave Park's body in half. Attempting to come up with a plan, Jinwoo notices Juhee's disturbed expression along with several hunters begging for their lives. Jinwoo digs deeper to come up with a plan. Scanning the statues around the edge of the dungeon, Jinwoo spots a statue with a musical instrument, ordering everyone to head towards that statue. With Song heading to his nearest statue, Song spots the statue playing its instrument, stating that it's safe to head to statues with musical instruments, prompting Mr. Kim to successfully find a statue of his own, only to begin breaking down crying. Jinwoo and Juhee have also arrived at a music-playing statue, but Jinwoo notes that the statue isn't playing its instrument, deducing that only one person can stand below each music-playing statue. Leaving the frightened Juhee beneath the statue, Jinwoo runs to search for another statue, catching the attention of the giant statue. Barely able to spot a music-playing statue, Jinwoo is barely able to avoid the giant statue's advances, but unfortunately wounds up beneath a shield-wielding statue. With the shield statue bringing its shield down on Jinwoo, he barely manages to survive, managing to crawl to a music-playing statue. With everyone now under a music-playing statue, they all spot the giant statue go back to its original location, seemingly turning off. Rushing to Jinwoo's side, Juhee notices Jinwoo's severed leg, immediately applying her healing magic, but Juhee is unable to completely heal Jinwoo, having depleted all her mana. With everyone wondering what now, Mr. Kim speaks up, demanding that Song take accountability, being the leader of the group that agreed to explore this dungeon. Just then, an altar appears in the middle of the dungeon, prompting Jinwoo to realize that the altar aligns with the third commandment, as by believing in God, someone must be sacrificed. Hearing this, Mr. Kim raises his blade to Song's neck, ordering Song to sacrifice himself and atone for his sins. With Song agreeing, Jinwoo thinks about how this is wrong, as everyone voted and agreed as a group, but when Song enters the vicinity of the altar, an orange flame appears. Curious as to the reason for this, Jinwoo asks 2 other party members to help him enter the altar's domain, prompting 3 more orange flames to appear. With Jinwoo attempting to figure out what is happening, Song reminds Jinwoo that today is the 7th day of their dungeon raid, meaning if they wait any longer to defeat this dungeon, the dungeon itself will open. This is referred to as a dungeon break, as the dungeon will act as a portal between the human world and the monsters. With Jinwoo asking for Joo-hee and Mr. Kim to enter the vicinity of the altar as well, we see 6 orange flames in total. But just then, an additional ring of blue flames appear around them along with the dungeon doors opening. As the blue flames begin to disappear one by one, everyone notices the statues along the edge of the dungeon begin to move, fearing what will happen when the statues reach them. Jinwoo is able to figure out that the statues only move when they aren't looking at them. But with the temptation of freedom before them, one of the female hunters beside Jinwoo makes a break for the door, managing to escape successfully, but one of the orange flames disappears. Seeing her escape, another hunter pushes Jinwoo aside, also managing to escape, leaving only 4 remaining. Seeing Mr. Kim tempted by freedom as well, Jinwoo states that they need at least 4 people to stop all the statues, and that once the blue flames all disappear, they can all escape. Sadly, Mr. Kim apologizes in tears, stating that they can't be certain that they can escape, only to escape out of the dungeon himself. Knowing that they will all die soon, Song asks that Joo-hee and Jinwoo leave him, as they need at least 1 person in the vicinity of the altar to keep the door open. As Joo-hee attempts to move, Joo-hee falls to her knees, as her fatigue has finally kicked in. With no other choice, Song and Jinwoo agree that Jinwoo will stay behind, unable to move himself, and Song will carry Joo-hee to safety. When Joo-hee offers to stay behind, Jinwoo states that she must live, handing her the essence stone he obtained, only for Song to knock Joo-hee unconscious, carrying her on his shoulder, only to leave the dungeon. With Jinwoo alone, he attempts to stand off against the swarm of statues, but instead is brutally flung around, ultimately falling onto the center of the altar, bleeding out. As the statues puncture his body with their weapons, Jinwoo cries out that he has a family as well, demanding for a second chance. As everything goes black, a sudden system terminal pops up, stating that Jinwoo has completed the secret quest, Courage of the Weak. The system terminal asks if Jinwoo wants to be given the player status, reminding Jinwoo that his heart will stop in 0.02 seconds, prompting Jinwoo to accept the offer. With his life flashing before his eyes upon accepting the player title, Jinwoo suddenly wakes up in a hospital bed, realizing that his arm is completely fine. Fearing that his leg may still be missing, Jinwoo is pleasantly surprised to see that his leg has also healed, along with the various stab wounds he endured from the statues. Wondering if everything he went through was simply a dream, Jinwoo is interrupted by 2 men from the Hunters Association surveillance team, Woo Jinchul and Kong Taeshik. Sitting down to have a chat, Jinchul tells Jinwoo that he's been asleep for 3 days, but Jinwoo is more concerned about Song and Joo-hee. Jinchul unfortunately reveals that due to Song's arm being severed, he'll most likely have to retire from being a hunter. As for Joo-hee, she seems to be traumatized, currently undergoing psychiatric care, meaning her role as a hunter is currently on hold. Jinchul calmly repeats to Jinwoo that out of all the party members that entered the double dungeon, only 6 were able to make it out alive, but Jinchul does mention something peculiar. Apparently, when he along with several members of the White Tiger Guild went to rescue Jinwoo's party, they only ended up discovering Jinwoo's unconscious body, and no temple nor statues. Shocked to hear this, Jinwoo is unable to fathom what he just heard, but Jinchul reassures Jinwoo that he has no reason to suspect anything malicious went on, trusting Jinwoo and his members' words. Out of nowhere, Jinchul gets serious, asking if Jinwoo experienced a double awakening. Since it's quite well known that hunters once awakened can never improve their stats no matter how hard they train, but there have been rare cases in the past where hunters have awakened a second time, allowing the same hunters to reach the S rank. Having brought a mana measuring device, Jinchul asks Jinwoo to place his hand on the device to re-evaluate Jinwoo's current mana level. Since Jinchul heard that the statues in the dungeon were S rank and above, Jinchul deduces that the only way Jinwoo could have possibly survived was to be S rank or greater. Sadly, the reading on the device reveals that Jinwoo's mana level is still at 10, meaning Jinwoo is still an E rank hunter. As Jinchul and Taeshik leave, Jinwoo lies back in bed, trying to digest what is going on, but suddenly Jinwoo notices a system terminal pop up with several unread messages. Recognizing the terminal as the one he saw before he was forced to accept the player title, Jinwoo pokes at it, noting how it is not a physical terminal. Just then, Jaina arrives, scolding Jinwoo for being such a reckless older brother. Seeing Jaina in front of him, Jinwoo can't help but smile, happy to see his little sis. But this annoys Jaina, who states that she'll drop out of school and go job hunting if it means Jinwoo will stop having to risk his life as a hunter. Apologizing for always worrying her, Jinwoo asks if Jaina can see the system terminal in front of him, but Jaina gets confused, wondering if Jinwoo hit his head. Asking for some advice, Jinwoo learns from Jaina that he should open the messages he's received from this mysterious system terminal Jinwoo is seeing, just like a video game. With Jaina leaving for now, Jinwoo begins sifting through all the notifications, reading that the system intends to help Jinwoo get stronger, but if Jinwoo doesn't comply, he'll get punished. Stopping on his assigned daily quest, Jinwoo gets annoyed that he has to perform push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and running whilst he's still hospitalized, so Jinwoo simply lays back down, ignoring the daily quest. Cutting to Jinchul, we see him reporting Jinwoo's case to Gunny, noting how although Jinwoo didn't awaken again, it definitely is weird that no dungeon break ended up happening. That evening, we follow Guildmaster Choi, asking S-rank Cha Hae-in to participate in an upcoming B-rank dungeon raid. Apparently, since Cha was only recently a hunter, Choi states that he wants Cha to gain some more experience leading a team, reassuring Cha that all she needs to do is fight like she normally does, and that will be enough to lead the raid. Choi reminds Cha that his hunter guild is quite powerful in Japan, but compared to international guilds they are nothing. Therefore, learning ways to improve their members as a team is the ideal solution to grow stronger. That night, a huge gate begins forming in the middle of a busy road, but at the same time, Jinwoo's daily quest expires. As the system terminal begins to bug out, Jinwoo suddenly is forced awake, noticing huge amounts of shaking around his hospital bed. Having been assigned as punishment, Jinwoo awakens in a desert, turning to spot a massive poisonous centipede. Seeing a timer pop up, telling Jinwoo to survive for 4 hours, Jinwoo doesn't have time to wonder if this is a dream, running across the sand dunes in fear for his life. With the nurses in the hospital checking in on Jinwoo, they start panicking when they realize Jinwoo isn't in his room. But at the same time, as Jinwoo tirelessly flees from the various centipedes chasing him, his 4-hour time elapses, transporting him back into the hospital. Before Jinwoo collapses, he spots the system terminal congratulating him for surviving, only to reward Jinwoo. Several days later, Jinwoo gets ready for his daily quest, reassuring Jaina that she doesn't need to stress about him. Following Juhee, we see that she has been requested to help attend a D-rank dungeon raid. But since Juhee is still shaken up, she sadly declines the offer, but gets happy hearing that Jinwoo has finally awoken from the hospital. As Juhee brings a little basket of flowers for Jinwoo, she spots several nurses gossiping about Jinwoo, noting how weird it is for Jinwoo to have recently begun daily exercises. With Juhee unable to meet with Jinwoo, we cut back to Jinwoo, who has completed his daily quest for the day, learning that the system terminals are indeed real, as upon completion of his daily quest, Jinwoo is granted 3 rewards. First, Jinwoo is granted a full recovery of all exhaustion that can be used whenever. The second is skill points that can be used on any attribute. For Jinwoo, he's been placing them in strength, resulting in his body slowly growing more and more muscles. Jinwoo's final gift is a loot box, which up until now he had been receiving pins and bandages. But today he's received a mysterious key that opens a gate at Hapjeong subway station. With news of D-rank, C-rank, and B-rank gates beginning to appear more frequently around the country, we follow Jinwoo sitting beside his unconscious mother, revealed to have contracted a condition called eternal sleep. Apparently 4 years ago, Jinwoo's mother had entered the final stages of the disease, and sadly the only thing doctors can do is keep Jinwoo's mother on life support. Working through his daily quests, Jinwoo begins thinking back on his life, having expected to afford treatment for his mother when he first became a hunter. But as Jinwoo began joining raids, he realized that he was unable to fend for himself. But now with this opportunity to grow stronger, Jinwoo places most of his skill points into strength, heading to Hapjeong Station to enter the special gate. Having brought a weapon for safety, Jinwoo takes out the dungeon key, unlocking the dungeon, and is notified that he has entered an instance dungeon. Slowly descending the station, Jinwoo realizes that he is in a separate dimension, and that the only way to escape is to defeat the boss, or to use a teleportation stone. With no other choice but to continue deeper into the dungeon, Jinwoo arms himself with a blade, only to be stopped by 3 goblins. Not wanting to lose to these pathetic creatures, Jinwoo clashes with the 3 creatures, managing to impale one of the goblins. Feeling a surge of confidence rush over him, Jinwoo follows up, but slaying the remaining 2, happy to see that he has grown stronger. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo senses a powerful creature approaching from behind, managing to block the beast's advances, but unfortunately his blade shatters. Realizing the steel-fanged Lycan beast is far stronger than the goblins he just faced, Jinwoo begins to cower in fear. As the Lycan begins rushing Jinwoo gets pissed at his weak self, helplessly watching as the beast pounces on him. Mustering up the courage to move, Jinwoo leaps as far as he can from the Lycan, surprisingly flipping multiple times through the air. Catching himself in a handstand, Jinwoo pushes off with his arms, noting how light his body feels as he leaps over the Lycan. As the Lycan begins dashing towards Jinwoo steals his resolve, gripping his fist as hard as he can, only to launch his fist at the Lycan. In an instant, the Lycan is flung back, surprising Jinwoo, believing that the points he put into strength is paying off. Sadly, the Lycan simply gets back up, making Jinwoo aware that it's still far stronger than Jinwoo. As the Lycan once again initiates the fight, Jinwoo relentlessly throws punch after punch, all whilst dodging the Lycan's steel jaw. But as when the Lycan gets too close, Jinwoo is forced to dodge to the side, allowing the Lycan to continue charging into a wall. Seeing that the Lycan hasn't sustained an ounce of damage, Jinwoo begins running to buy time, racking his brain for a solution to defeat the creature. Having only brought food and water, Jinwoo wonders how he'll get a powerful item to slay the creature, suddenly realizing something. As the Lycan continues to hunt Jinwoo down, Jinwoo stops to open his player inventory, reaching in and grabbing a powerful sword. Right as the Lycan reaches Jinwoo uses his new sword, easily splitting the creature in 2 with a single slash. Trying to make sense of what just happened, Jinwoo states that the blade apparently belonged to Mr. Kim, having paid 3 million for the special sword, all whilst acquiring a title and being notified of a level up. Sensing 2 more Lycans approaching, Jinwoo states that he has no longer any reason to fear the creatures, gripping his new weapon. But as the Lycan begins to fastly approach, Jinwoo realizes that his sword is lodged into the ground, managing to barely free, right as the Lycans attack. With one Lycan dodging Jinwoo's initial slash, the other manages to bite down and restrain Jinwoo's blade. Amazed at the grip strength of the Lycan's steel fangs, Jinwoo manages to kick the Lycan holding onto his sword, instantly cleaving the creature into 2. Knowing that the Lycans don't even compare to statues in the double dungeon, Jinwoo turns to the second Lycan, only for the creature to retreat. Sitting down to assess his stats, Jinwoo realizes that he has reached a level of 2, noting how his level never changed when he did his daily quests, but reasons that he only levels up during real combat. Additionally, Jinwoo notes that upon leveling up, his wounds have been healed and that each of his 5 stats have risen by a single level, making leveling up more efficient than daily quests that only yield 3 skill points. Wondering what a single skill point does to his overall body, Jinwoo reasons he should think about these things later. Heading over to retrieve the essence stones from the monsters he's slain, Jinwoo is surprised to see the system notify him that he has received a monster drop instead, a Lycan's tooth. Navigating around the system terminal, Jinwoo notices a store, sad to see that he's too low level to purchase any items, opting to sell his most recent leaken tooth for 20 gold instead. Wondering how much the system's gold is compared to his world's gold, Jinwoo once again brushes that question aside, stating that he must defeat the dungeon boss if he wants to leave. Knowing that he must get stronger first, before he can take on a dungeon boss by himself, Jinwoo suddenly spots the Leaken that fled earlier, having returned with a pack of lichens. Charging head first into the pack of lichens, Jinwoo begins to slay one Leaken at a time, stopping to assess the situation, thinking about what he could achieve with this new-found gift. Relentlessly dismantling the swarm, multiple level-up notifications can be seen as Jinwoo continues to carve through the pack, but at the same time, the gate that appeared on the road continues to grow in size, with no hunters arriving to take care of it. Having acquired the Wolf Assassin title, Jinwoo is seen victorious and all covered in blood, but sad to see that his sword will break soon. Reading up on his new Wolf Assassin title, Jinwoo is amazed to see that his attacks against animal-type monsters are boosted by 40%, and that he has acquired 34 wolf fangs, 2 worn daggers, a traveler's cloak, and surprisingly a teleportation stone. Wondering if he should use the teleportation stone to leave, Jinwoo wonders if he'll ever get another one of these instance dungeons again, reasoning that it can't hurt to explore the dungeon a little more. Cutting to Juhee, we see her receive a call whilst out on a midnight stroll, learning that a dungeon nearby has opened, and they are in need of a healer. As Jinwoo makes it deeper into the dungeon, he begins noticing his battles against various magical beasts growing easier and easier. Jinwoo realizes that the red text he saw for the Leaken had now turned white, meaning white text represents weak monsters, orange represents moderate monsters, and red means difficult monsters. Happy to have reached level 15, Jinwoo notes how he no longer can level up with the weaker magical beasts, reasoning that it's time to head downstairs to face this powerful aura he's been sensing. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, Jinwoo is weirded out by the decrepit station, but out of nowhere an attack suddenly sends Jinwoo flying against the wall, barely able to block the attack, but the attack instantly shatters his sword. Appearing from a stream of water, the blue Venomfang Kasaka floor boss appears, with an orange text. Scanning the creature, Jinwoo notes the floor boss's tough skin, rushing to engage the approaching snake, but leaves no dent due to the creature's tough skin. Circling around, the floor boss begins chasing Jinwoo through the station, helplessly body slammed into the stream of water, only to barely survive the creature's entrapment in the water. Flung across the station's platform, Jinwoo watches as the snake tosses a train at Jinwoo, scrambling to evade the oncoming projectile. Moving in on Jinwoo, the floor boss manages to pin Jinwoo to a wall, smashing him through said wall, pissing Jinwoo off as he demands to know why he hasn't grown stronger the slightest bit. Knowing that no one will come to save him, Jinwoo is smashed into the station ceiling, falling onto the ground, but Jinwoo has clearly had enough. Stabbing and evading the creature's advances, Jinwoo knows that compared to the S-rank statues, this creature is nothing, opting to ditch his blade to cling onto the snake. Choosing to bet on his raw strength, Jinwoo begins tightening his grip around the snake's neck, watching as the snake squirms and flails around, only to collapse. With the system notifying Jinwoo of his level ups, Jinwoo smirks, happy to see that he has indeed grown stronger, having just defeated a dungeon by himself. Additionally, Jinwoo notices that he has acquired Kasaka's Venomfang dagger, a blade double the attack of Mr. Kim's sword, even applying a drain and a paralysis effect on enemies, along with Kasaka's Venom Gland, a potion that seems too risky to use. Just then, the system notifies Jinwoo of his completion of the dungeon, reverting the station back to normal, prompting Jinwoo to exit from where he came from. Upon reaching the exit, Jinwoo finds it weird that no one is around, but he suddenly hears a military officer call out. Demanding to know why Jinwoo just appeared out of the station, the officer apologizes upon learning that Jinwoo is a hunter, guiding Jinwoo to a dungeon break nearby. Apparently, the dispatch hunters were able to clean up most monsters, leaving only the dungeon boss, which Jinwoo can sense with his new level. Upon arriving on the scene, Jinwoo is able to sense that there are 8 E-rank hunters and 2 D-rank hunters, all struggling to break through the dungeon boss's defense. Suddenly, Jinwoo spots Jui, sad to see that she still hasn't recovered from the trauma from the double dungeon. But this only motivates Jinwoo to step in. With the broken sword he's still holding, Jinwoo cocks back the blade, propelling the sword through the dungeon boss's skull, allowing the other hunters to subdue and finally defeat the boss. As the hunters are relieved to have defeated the boss, one of the knights gets stressed, knowing that they must have been helped by a monstrous hunter, able to pierce the dungeon boss's defenses with a single strike. Spotting a shattered blade nearby, the hunter asks if anyone knows who the blade belongs to, but Jui manages to spot Jinwoo leaving the scene, wondering how powerful Jinwoo has become. Back in the hospital, we see 2 nurses gossiping about Jinwoo, amazed that he has a hot body and a cute face, all whilst Jinwoo smashes out his daily quest. Upon visiting Jinwoo, one of the newer nurses is shocked, amazed that Jinwoo's muscles are far more amazing in person. Apologizing for being shirtless, Jinwoo slips on a shirt, only to ask the flustered nurse what he can help with. Shyly, the nurse reminds Jinwoo that he'll be discharged today, asking Jinwoo to head to the front desk in order to fill in some paperwork. Happy to hear that, Jinwoo begins heading towards the front desk, but as Jinwoo leaves his room, the nurse asks for Jinwoo's phone number. Comedically, Jinwoo obliges, believing that the nurse needs his number to send him his test results. That morning, we followed an interview on a news broadcast, interviewing S-rank hunter Baek Yunho. The interviewer remarks that Yunho is one of 7 S-rank hunters in the country, asking what it must be like for hunters to hone their skills and to put their lives on the line when exploring dungeons. Pleased by the question, Yunho states that the sole existence of a hunter is to explore and train, relating back to a time when he was a firefighter and that he needed to master the craft in order to ensure no one gets hurt. At the same time, we see Jaina impressed by Yuho on the television, but seeing as she'll be late for school, she begins rushing out of her apartment. Running into Jinwoo, Jinwoo reminds Jaina to be careful on her way to school, but having not seen Jinwoo in a while, Jaina asks Jinwoo if he's been working out. Walking towards Jinwoo, Jaina is shocked to see Jinwoo has also grown taller, which Jinwoo didn't notice. Before Jaina leaves, Jinwoo forces Jaina to take an umbrella, wishing her a safe trip. Checking his daily quests, Jinwoo notes that he'll finish his required 10-kilometer run later today. Checking out his own body, Jinwoo speculates that if he continues to put his points into strength, he'll probably become a bodybuilder. Knowing that he still has 12 skill points to use, Jinwoo notes how he should play some agility, thinking that vitality and perception could be helpful as well. But as for intelligence, Jinwoo wonders when he would have to use magic. Placing his points into strength, agility, and perception, Jinwoo suddenly gets a call from his landlord, realizing that he needs to pay this month's rent. Promising to pay soon, Jinwoo begins searching for dungeon raids he can join in on, noting how he has to raid higher-ranked dungeons to earn more money. Jinwoo thinks his ability to endlessly grow seems like a skill that no one has ever heard of. Therefore, Jinwoo states that he better keep this cheat skill a secret until he can at least grow stronger. Spotting an enticing raid, Jinwoo jogs to his destination, finishing the 10 kilometers along with meeting up with his raid party. Greeting Hwang Dong-suk, some of Dong-suk's members recognize Jinwoo, yelling that Jinwoo is known as the weakest hunter in the world, but Dong-suk asks Jinwoo to ignore them, apologizing for their rude remarks. Going over the rules, Dong-suk states that they'll be raiding a C-rank dungeon and they need a minimum of 8 hunters, with half needing to be at least C-rank. Dong-suk states that Jinwoo's role is to solely fill a slot, promising Jinwoo to still pay him 2 million for participating, prompting Jinwoo to scan the other hunters, noting how there are 4 C ranks and 2 D ranks. Dong-suk asks Jinwoo to help carry a bag filled with food, spare clothing, gear, and med kits, but Jinwoo realizes that their party doesn't have a healer, learning that since it's hard for independent raids to acquire a healer. Sensing something suspicious about this amazing opportunity, Jinwoo agrees to sign a contract, but suddenly spots Yu Jinho, a 21-year-old D-rank hunter. Seeing Jinho's gear, Jinwoo realizes that Jinho must be from a very wealthy family, but nonetheless, everyone begins heading into the dungeon. Upon confirming that the dungeon is C rank, the party heads through the portal, prompting Kyuan to light up the dark dungeon with some light magic. As the party begins heading through the dungeon's cave, they all note how there are no glow stones, rocks that faintly light up dungeons, which are different from essence stones from monster drops and mana stones that people normally mine. With several minutes passing, the party gets weirded out, wondering why they have yet to run into any magical beasts. Running into a location filled with holes, everyone begins sensing a strange aura approaching, all beginning to brace for whatever is to come. Racking his brain for what the enemies could be, Jinwoo deduces that they are up against insect-type monsters, alerting everyone that the creatures are approaching from above. With Dong-suk activating his taunt skill, Dong-suk draws the attention of all the insects, ordering his men to protect Kyunwon, who begins channeling a fire spell. With several seconds passing, Kyunwon manages to unleash the powerful fire spell, giving the rest of the party courage to slaughter the insects. Seeing Dong-suk and his men slay the ants, Jinwoo praises the hunter's coordination, but still notes something strange about the situation. Turning to Jinho, Jinwoo notes how his expensive gear is keeping Jinho alive, but as Dong-suk and his members finish up the insects, he thanks Jinwoo for alerting them to the attack. As Dong-suk and his men inspect the bodies of the insects, they realize that the insects have bite marks that imply a greater monster must have terrorized the insects prior, but Jinwoo spots Dong-suk acting strange, warning Jinho to be wary of the others. As everyone continues deeper into the dungeons, Jinwoo begins thinking about the conditions of this raid, finding it weird that Dong-suk's independent party seems quite strong, but refuses to accept healers and has a reputation of recruiting strangers for every dungeon raid. Finally, encountering a web-filled section of the dungeon, Dong-suk begins carving through the webs, prompting Kyunwon to light up the dark tunnel, revealing a massive pile of mana crystals. Seeing the tons of mana crystals, Dong-suk states that he's hit gold, estimating the mana crystals total around 1 billion, wanting to use the money to catch up to his younger brother. Realizing something, Jinho asks to see Jinwoo's contract, confronting Dong-suk as Jinho had realized that Jinwoo's contract had specified that Jinwoo won't be getting any drops from mana crystals and only monster drops. Changing the topic, Dong-suk promises to pay Jinwoo properly, but first they need to mine the mana crystals before defeating the giant spider dungeon boss. Asking his men to grab mining equipment, Dong-suk hears his men apologize for forgetting the mining tools elsewhere in the dungeon. Scolding his men for being so forgetful, Dong-suk asks Jinwoo and Jinho to stay and watch the dungeon boss, ignoring Jinwoo's concerns, as Dong-suk states that they should trust his orders. As Dong-suk and his men leave, Jinwoo finally places the pieces together, knowing that Dong-suk and his men total to 6, exactly 2 men below an 8-party raid. Additionally, since Dong-suk has raided other C-rank dungeons before, it's strange for Dong-suk to recruit strangers. But just then we see Dong-suk order Kyunwon to seal off the dungeon entrance, trapping Jinwoo and Jinho with the dungeon boss. Flashing back, Jinwoo is reminded of a time when Song had told him about scummy hunters that would purposely get other party members killed in a dungeon, in order to take more loot for themselves as things that happen in the dungeon can't be tracked down. With the noise from various rocks blocking Jinwoo and Jinho's escape, we see the dungeon boss slowly descend. But as Jinwoo thinks back on how much stronger he's gotten, Jinwoo equips his dagger, stepping up to confront the dungeon boss. Back outside the gate, we see Dong-suk and his men leave the portal, hearing his men ask him why they didn't just slay Jinwoo and Jinho. Dong-suk reminds his men that fighting near the spider boss would have woken the boss up, so by letting the spider eat the two, they can go in and mine all the mana crystals for themselves. Dong-suk notes how there were other entrances on the ceiling in the boss room, so they can enter and exit through them once the dungeon boss has settled down. But as they wait, Dong-suk states that in case they aren't able to gather enough mana crystals, they can always steal Jinho's rare gear. Crouching down and browsing through his phone, Dong-suk wonders which rich family Jinho belongs to, reasoning he should attend the kid's funeral, but suddenly asks Kyuan if he could beat the dungeon boss himself, happy to hear that Kyuan agrees that they would need their entire army to slay such a creature. Cutting back to Jinwoo and Jinho, Jinho advises Jinwoo to flee instead of facing the boss, revealing that the spider dungeon boss is at least C rank, and it would take an upper C rank or even a B-rank hunter to solo such a boss. Knowing that Jinho is correct, Jinwoo remembers how the snake and the golem bosses were D-rank, meaning he might not stand a chance against the spider dungeon boss, but Jinwoo can't help but feel calm, smirking as he wonders how strong he is now. Currently level 18, Jinwoo grips his blade, dashing towards the spider, only to swiftly pass through it, striking it a couple of times. At the same time, we see Gunhee chatting with Jinchul, having finished a draining meeting, asking if Jinchul could clear up his schedule, needing a break from all the press. As the dungeon boss begins striking back, Jinwoo evades each strike, heading to cut off one of the spider's legs, but is forced to retreat when his blade doesn't even scratch the spider's leg. Knowing a single strike from the spider will end him, Jinwoo begins ducking and weaving below the spider's body, trying to find an opening, but as Jinho watches on, he gets terrified, noting how Jinwoo can't be E-rank. Jinho suspects that Jinwoo is a false ranker, someone that is able to manipulate their magic power, purposely placing lower than expected in order to hunt for fun. As Jinho falls to his knees powerless, Jinwoo continues to hack away at the spider, but is stuck, unable to break through the spider's thick exoskeleton. With his fatigue already at 57, Jinwoo confirms that his daggers have paralysis and drain on them, realizing that he'll need to use them to defeat the boss. Dashing forwards, Jinwoo realizes he can target the weaker spots of the spider to apply the debuffs, but suddenly senses something dangerous, leaping back, just avoiding the spider's acid spit. With another of the spider's trump cards revealed, Jinwoo knows that he'll lose if the fight draws out longer, opting to use his new dash skill. With a single cast of dash, Jinwoo appears above the spider, managing to impale and apply his dagger debuffs to the spider, but instantly the spider nullifies the debuffs. Knowing that he needs to keep applying the debuffs, Jinwoo speeds up, amazing Jinho as he tries to keep up with Jinwoo, but as Jinwoo sees an opening, he realizes that his fatigue has hit 70, giving the spider an opening to knock Jinwoo aside. As the spider scurries over to Jinwoo, it raises its claw to pierce Jinwoo, but right before it does, Jinwoo is reminded of his full recovery from his daily quests, barely activating it and escaping right before he's impaled. Once again above the creature, Jinwoo lands cleanly on the spider's face, impaling each and every one of the spider's eyes, successfully stacking paralysis and drain repeatedly until the spider collapses. Just like that, Jinwoo had soloed a C-rank dungeon boss, gaining a couple levels and grateful to have kept the full recovery for occasions like this. Amazed and terrified at Jinwoo's potential, Jinho watches as Jinwoo retrieves the dungeon boss essence stone, politely offering to carry all the gear, handing Jinwoo some water only to begin mining some mana stones. Weirded out by Jinho's sudden change in attitude, Jinwoo spots Dong-suk and his party arriving in the boss room through an entrance in the ceiling, all wondering who defeated the dungeon boss. At the same time, we see Gunhee and Jinchul sparring, with Gunhee nonchalantly parrying and blocking each of Jinchul's strikes, only to land a powerful punch on Jinchul. Checking to see if Jinchul is okay, Gunhee thanks Jinchul, as he needed to relieve some stress, reminding Jinchul that relying solely on one's hunter skills is foolish, as it's important to hone one's mind and body normally. Back with Jinwoo, we see Dong-suk and his men confirm that the spider boss had been defeated, revealing that they know Jinho is the son of Yu Myung-han, the head of the Eugene Construction Company. Curious as to why Dong-suk is mentioning that now, Jinho is horrified to hear Dong-suk offer him to join them, asking Jinho to kill Jinwoo. Dong-suk reasons that if Jinho was the one that soloed the dungeon boss, then it must mean that Jinho's gear has special enchantments that even Dong-suk and his party may have trouble with. Seeing Jinho hesitate, Dong-suk states that he can either accept his offer, or he can die here with Jinwoo. Seeing Jinho slowly approach Jinwood, Dong-suk is happy to see Jinho is choosing to slay Jinwoo, but is shocked when Jinho has decided to fight alongside Jinwoo. With no other choice, Dong-suk and his men begin slowly approaching Jinwoo and Jinho, asking if they have ever slayed another human before, but just then, Jinwoo gets an urgent quest, ordering Jinwoo to slay the 6 entities with immense bloodlust, or else Jinwoo will receive a punishment. As Kwon fires a spell at Jinwoo, We cut to Heejin meeting up with some friends, heading to a cafe to catch up. Heejin notes how she, along with other White Tiger Guild members, are doing nothing noteworthy, asking Gina about her training with Cha, as they are both Hunter Guild members. Gina states that Cha is beyond this world, easily defeating A-rank monsters that would normally be quite hard for her. Even Kahun, the leader of her party, was amazed, but Gina asks if Chul, the leader of Jinny's party, is any good. As the girls gossip about the suspiciously high death rates in dungeon raids recently, we cut back to Jinwoo, barely alive from the projectile Q-on had landed on him. Reminded of the betrayal he felt at other humans, Jinwoo wonders if the urgent quest is the system's way of helping him, prompting Jinwoo to slowly get up, trudging over to Dong-suk and his men. Seeing Jinwoo pathetically waddle towards them, Dong-suk and his men feel sorry for Jinwoo, but suddenly see Jinwoo acting possessed. Having heard enough, one of Dong-suk's men, Juntae, leans on Jinwoo, mocking Jinwoo's pathetic act, but Jinwoo silences Juntae, conjuring his dagger, only decapitating Juntae with a single slash. Horrified, Dong-suk notes how Juntae was a D rank, but Jinwoo only thinks about how he must kill these men in order to survive. As three of Dong-suk's men rush and fire projectiles at Jinwoo, Jinwoo instantly impales two of the attackers, applying paralysis and drain to both men, following up by cutting down the third man, only to slay Q-on as well. With only Dong-suk left, Dong-suk immediately casts reinforcement, deducing that Jinwoo's dagger has special debuffs, stating that his fortified body should now withstand Jinwoo's dagger. Sadly, Jinwoo simply dashes in close, grabbing and slamming Dong-suk's head into the ground. Completely defeated, Dong-suk begs for his life, offering to pay Jinwoo any amount of money he wants, but Jinwoo reminds Dong-suk that he tried to kill him 3 times. Pissed at Jinwoo's attitude, Dong-suk cries that his brother is very strong, but Jinwoo ignores his cries, decapitating Dong-suk and finishing up his urgent quest. As the dungeon begins to close, Jinwoo and Jinho report their raid to Association Worker. But as Jinho fills the lady in on everything, Jinwoo checks out his rewards for completing the sudden quest, shocked to be given the skill Murderous Intent, a skill that weakens all abilities of the enemy. Having lied to the lady, Jinho is forced to claim all the glory, but as the lady leaves, Jinwoo states that he's happy to have given Gina an umbrella, all whilst we cut to Dong-suk's younger brother, staring off into the distance. Cutting to Jinchul, we see him receive a report on the recent dungeon raid, where Dong-suk and his men were killed, but the C-rank dungeon was still completed. Jinchul hears that Jinho was carrying very expensive gear, reasoning that it was Jinho that took care of the boss, but is surprised to hear Jinwoo was also a part of the raid, realizing that Dong-suk's younger brother, Hwang Dong-soo, may show up. Back with Jinwoo, we see him arriving home, exciting Gina as he's brought fried chicken home. On top of that, Jinwoo mentions how he can cover his mom's hospital bill along with their living expenses for a while, piquing Gina's interest as she notes Jinwoo is normally more frugal. As the two sit down to munch on the fried chicken, Gina asks about Jinwoo's recent raid, believing that it must have been pretty easy with other higher rank hunters. Thinking back on the raid, Jinwoo notes how he was quite cold back there, easily able to dismantle a whole group of humans, wondering if the system is changing him for the better. With Gina calling out to Jinwoo, Jinwoo apologizes for zoning out, knowing that if he's forced to go through such a traumatic event again, he won't hesitate, as he needs to get stronger to protect his family. As Jinwoo cracks open and sips a beer, a system terminal pops up, stating that it has detected a toxic chemical entering Jinwoo's body, instantly removing it after a few seconds. Amazed, Jinwoo chugs the rest of his beer, heading to his room, but teases Gina for eating too much. Now alone, Jinwoo experiments with a few more beers, impressed that he's not getting drunk at all, but realizes that it's a reward from surviving the double dungeon. Health and longevity buff allows immunity to all toxins along with improved regeneration capacity, which explains why Jinwoo's limbs came back after reviving as a player. As Jinwoo rests for the day, Gina notifies Jinwoo that a man by the name of Jinho is asking to meet with Jinwoo. But before Jinwoo leaves, Gina scolds Jinwoo for drinking too much, which Jinwoo reassures Gina that he's perfectly fine. Meeting up at a nearby cafe, Jinho thanks Jinwoo again for saving his life, which Jinwoo says is fine, happy to have received a good chunk of the essence stones to sell. Jinwoo asks if Jinho had revealed what really happened in the dungeon, but Jinho states that the violence was all in self-defense, so he hasn't told anyone yet. Just then, Jinho reveals that he wants to start a strike team, which Jinwoo immediately declines, anticipating that Jinho is asking him to join. Before Jinwoo leaves, Jinho reveals that he wants to start his own guild, and that they need only 19 more raids to be certified. Interested, Jinwoo learns that Jinho is in desperate need of manpower, wanting to start his own guild knowing that he'll inherit his father's company soon. Jinwoo notes how Jinho is the second son to the prestigious Eugene Construction Company, surprised that Jinho's father wants to start a guild for themselves. Jinho reveals that his father intends to have a S-rank hunter as their guild leader, but Jinwoo reminds Jinho that all 7 S-rank hunters in Korea are busy, with a former S-rank healer, Min Byung-yu, already retired. Jinwoo realizes that Jinho's father intends to steal a S-rank hunter from another guild, warning against that as it may start political war, but Jinho states that he wants Jinwoo as their leader, believing that Jinwoo is already at least a B-rank hunter. Knowing that he nor his brother can lead their new guild, Jinho hands Jinwoo the location of their new guild building, stating that Jinwoo can have the $30 billion building after he completes 19 raids for their guild. Shocked at the amazing offer, Jinwoo calms himself, reasoning that he will probably become a S-rank or greater hunter in no time. Therefore, this $30 billion offer is nothing. As Jinwoo attempts to leave, Jinho cries that in exchange for Jinwoo's cooperation, he promises to never reveal Jinwoo's true power no matter what. That night, we cut to Hwang Dong-soo, asking his assistant Laura about the details of his older brother Dong-suk's death. Dong-soo wonders what happens if he murders another person in another country, prompting Laura to state that murder can lead to the death penalty, but in some cases, the murderer may be evicted to their home country, where they could possibly bargain for a lighter punishment. Happy to hear this, Dong-soo asks when he's free, disappointed that he'll have to wait, but takes a mental note of Jinho and Jinwoo. The next day, Jinwoo and Jaina are preparing to work out together, both jogging alongside each other as Jinwoo asks Jaina what she would do with $30 billion. Surprised by the amount, Jaina states that she would pay for her mother's hospital bills, along with her school tuition. As for the rest, she doesn't know. Hearing this, Jinwoo speeds up, leaving Jaina alone, completing his daily quest for the day. Just then, Jinwoo realizes that the system had logged 11 kilometers out of 10, wondering how far the system will track his exercises, once again leaving Jaina in the dust in order to complete double of what is required. Suddenly, Jinwoo notices his daily quest reveals itself as a hidden quest, granting Jinwoo a full recovery, ability points, a blessed and accursed loot box. Opening up the blessed loot box, Jinwoo is stunned to receive a demon castle key of S-rank difficulty, smirking as he realizes something. The demon castle supposedly has the elixir of life, a magic that can cure all illnesses, prompting Jinwoo to visit his bedridden mother. Seeing as this is a no-brainer, Jinwoo uses the demon key, opening up a massive door, thinking about how powerful his enemies will be. Knowing that he's quite scared, Jinwoo states that he still has the teleportation stone from the previous instance dungeon, keeping it close as an escape option. Just then, a powerful creature roars, drawing Jinwoo's attention as it approaches Jinwoo, deemed Hell's gatekeeper Cerberus. Knowing that he needs to get stronger, Jinwoo equips his dagger, dashing forward and attempting to cut off Cerberus's leg, but leaves only a scratch, following up by barraging the creature with slashes, but still no damage. Activating his murderous intent, Jinwoo attempts to scare the creature, but Cerberus replies with a roar, instantly canceling out Jinwoo's intimidation skill. Moving in close, Jinwoo drives his dagger into Cerberus's nose, applying paralysis and drain, but Jinwoo is forced back when Cerberus instantly cleanses all debuffs, following up by tearing off Jinwoo's left arm. Terrified that Cerberus took away a third of his life, Jinwoo spots Cerberus activate its rage skill, doubling all its stats, only to be shocked when Cerberus's attacks become hard to read. Having already lost half of his health, Jinwoo is forced to use a full recovery, restoring his lost arm along with his health points, dashing forward to strike back. As Jinwoo attempts to fight back, he soon realizes that Cerberus is too quick, forced to flee as Cerberus lands hit after hit, taking Jinwoo closer and closer to 0 health. All while the system continues to alert Jinwoo of his health dropping too low. Knowing that he should leave, Jinwoo takes out the teleportation stone, but before he can use it, Cerberus appears, knocking Jinwoo back and separating him from the teleportation stone. Now forced to hide, Jinwoo remembers the system's shop, purchasing 3 health potions that heal 100 health points each. Looking through his inventory, Jinwoo spots the venom drop from defeating the snake in the instance dungeon. Drinking the potion knowing that any debuffs will be instantly removed, leaving only the potion's 20% physical boost. Just then Cerberus appears, forcing Jinwoo out from hiding. But Jinwoo notes how Cerberus's rage skill has expired. As Jinwoo attempts to move in close with his dagger, Jinwoo is sadly caught by the jaws of Cerberus, dropping below 1,000 health points, but Jinwoo finally is close enough. Gripping his dagger, Jinwoo repeatedly punctures Cerberus's eye with his blade, ultimately forcing Cerberus to drop dead, relinquishing Jinwoo as his newly acquired levels heal him. Checking out his monster drops, Jinwoo spots a demon castle door key, an item that he can access along with a fraction of the materials needed to craft the elixir of life. Knowing that he'll surely die if he enters the demon castle now, Jinwoo sets a goal of getting stronger first, before he returns to complete the elixir of life. Returning to his mother's side, Jinwoo can't help but be fixated on the elixir of life, wondering if this is the answer he's been looking for to awake his mother from her slumber. Knowing that he can only find and craft the elixir in the demon castle, Jinwoo knows that he is too weak at his current state, promising to get stronger. Cutting to a nearby cafe, Jinwoo agrees to help Jinho with completing 19 dungeon raids, but Jinwoo states that he only agrees if Jinho and himself are to raid the dungeons. Completely stunned by Jinwoo's conditions, Jinho reminds Jinwoo that they'll be raiding C-rank dungeons and that they need a minimum of 8 people per dungeon raid. Jinwoo simply says Jinho can find randoms that will fill in the positions, just like what Dong-suk did, but Jinho is worried that himself and Jinwoo are still too weak. Jinwoo states that by having only himself and Jinho enter the dungeons, they can guarantee that no one else gets injured, and plus having a clean record after 19 dungeon raids will surely impress Jinho's father, inspiring Jinho to agree to Jinwoo's conditions. Cutting to Cha Hae-in, we see Cha flawlessly exercising, sprinting around a racetrack only to stop for some water. As Cha cools off with some stretches, she calls out to the mysterious man that has been watching her, impressing the man as he hands Cha a business card belonging to Eugene Construction Company, Yoonbyeom Gil. Following Jinho and his father, Jinho listens as his father reminisces on the past 10 years, with the world being flipped on the resources found in the dungeons. Jinho's father notes how powerful the Hunter Association is, belonging to the government, and is solely responsible for classifying hunters' strengths along with keeping track of dungeon appearances. Even though the Hunter Association is influential, Jinho's father states that the 5 guilds, the Hunter Guild, the White Tiger Guild, the Fiend Guild, the Fame Guild, and the Knights Guild are way more influential, able to amass huge amounts of resources. Jinho's father reiterates that they themselves must start a guild, prompting Jinho to think about how powerless he is, wondering how he can impress his father. Back with Jinwoo, we see him completing his daily quest, sad to see that he isn't able to surpass the required daily tasks. Accepting his rewards, Jinwoo wonders if he can get another special key to an instance dungeon. But upon opening a loot box, Jinwoo is disappointed to see only a bingo ticket. Heading through town, Jinwoo notes how 3 skill points won't be enough progress, racking his brain to think of ways to get stronger. Knowing that the 19 dungeon raids will be good, Jinwoo wonders if he can level up in the penalty zone by defeating those centipedes, but realizes it'll be a waste of time if the centipedes don't level him up. Just then, Jinwoo receives a notification, asking Jinwoo to join a D-rank dungeon raid. Hesitant that he'll accidentally reveal his true power to others, Jinwoo realizes that he doesn't have time to waste, accepting the raid opportunity. Cutting to Song, we see him sparring one of his students, happy to see that his student is growing quickly, but is still unable to defeat Song even though Song only has one hand. Just then, Song receives the same notification as Jinwoo, asking Song to attend a D-rank dungeon raid, but Song wonders if he should even go. Song's student asks if Song intends to retire soon, prompting Song to agree that he might end up being a hindrance if he attends the dungeon raid, but Song states that he plans to do everything he can before he leaves this world. Cutting to Mr. Kim, we see him admiring his adorable daughter, revealing to his wife that he had received a dungeon summon. But this only gets Mr. Kim's wife to ask Mr. Kim to not go. Picking up his youngest daughter Yoonji, Mr. Kim reminds his wife that they'll need money to place Yoonji through kindergarten and their older daughter through junior high. Seeing as her husband is right, Mr. Kim promises to return safely, reassuring his daughter Yoonji that he is very strong. That evening, we see Baek Yunho scolding Choi Jong-in for pushing his media interview onto him, but Choi simply brushes it off, complimenting Yunho for being so inspiring on the news. Changing topics, Baek asks Choi what he wants to discuss, receiving some documents from Choi. Choi states that he has found several people form the Eugene Construction Company, trying to steal some of his hunters, which Baek reveals Eugene Construction is doing the same to him as well, demanding to know what Choi wants from him. Cutting to Joo-hee, we see her curled up in her room, chatting with her mother, who begs Joo-hee to give up the life of a hunter, but this infuriates Joo-hee. Joo-hee promises to not be a burden, stealing her resolve as she accepts a D-rank dungeon raid. Back with Cha, we see her heading to Choi's office, greeting Baek as he exits Choi's office, reporting that she was approached by a Eugene construction worker earlier that day. Choi is happy to hear that Cha has refused to join Eugene Construction's new guild, but Cha wonders what Choi and Baek were talking about. Following Baek as he sits at a bar, it's revealed that Choi had reminded Baek of the Jeju Island raid, stating that after the third failed attempt, no one has attempted the raid since. Choi utters that he plans to conquer the island once and for all, asking Baek to grow stronger, which prompts Baek to remember a terrible memory, seeing his S-rank friend Yoon Seok torn to pieces by the ants. At the same time, we see a mysterious old man asking another suited man to kill someone for him. The next day, we see Jinwoo preparing to leave, telling Jaina he'll be back soon, but Jaina voices how much Jinwoo has changed. Seeing Jinwoo leave, Jaina asks if Jinwoo needs to bring any equipment, but Jinwoo says it'll be quick. At the same time, we see Song heading towards the dungeon location, revealed to have awakened as a mage, even though he specializes in using a sword, but his swordsmanship can't harm any magical beasts. Just then, Song runs into Jinwoo, barely able to recognize Jinwoo, amazed at how mature he has grown. Song wonders what happened to Jinwoo's severed leg, believing that a high-ranking healer must have healed his leg, compared to Song, who was unable to receive treatment in time for his arm. As they both head towards the dungeon, Jinwoo helps Song enter the area, but they are both shocked to see that Joo-hee, Mr. Kim, and Kong are there as well. With Mr. Kim and Kong unable to look at Jinwoo, Song acknowledges that he too would be guilty after abandoning Jinwoo in the dungeon. Before Joo-hee and Jinwoo can catch up, a sudden black van pulls up, outstepping several criminals in orange jumpsuits, only to begin catcalling Joo-hee. Before the criminals can say another word, a Hunter Association worker, Kong Tae-shik steps in, silencing the men. Jinwoo and the others learn that criminals plan to help the hunters complete the dungeon raid due to the lack of manpower, and in exchange the criminals' sentencing time will be reduced. Fortunately, in case the criminals go crazy, Kong will step in and handle the criminals, being a B-rank hunter. Feeling something off with the situation, Jinwoo asks Joo-hee to not go on the raid, but Joo-hee states that she'll follow Jinwoo. Just then, Kong introduces himself to Jinwoo and Song, asking who'll be the raid leader. Turning to Jinwoo, Song asks if he can be leader again, apologizing to Jinwoo for his previous raid and promising to take the utmost precaution this time. With Mr. Kim and the others also agreeing to elect Song as the leader, we see Kong eyeing down Jinwoo, only for Song to rally the party to start the raid. Within the dungeon, the criminals begin running wild, gleefully slaughtering various goblins, shocking Song as he wonders who truly are the monsters. With Song brandishing a powerful fire spell and Jinwoo finishing off the last goblin, Song compliments Jinwoo for improving his attacks. Noticing Jinwoo's dagger, Song asks where Jinwoo acquired it, followed by Jui joking that Jinwoo hasn't gotten injured yet, which Jinwoo plays along. Focusing in on Jinwoo, Song confirms that Jinwoo has truly changed, having a more confident and powerful aura. But all whilst this happens, Taeshik continues to monitor everyone. As everyone continues deeper into the dungeon, they eventually run into a three-way fork in the dungeon, which Taeshik recommends that they can speed up the dungeon raid if they split up. As Taeshik and Song agree to have Taeshik gather the criminals and head down the right path, Jinwoo makes use of his heightened senses, able to sense that the dungeon boss is on the left path, suggesting that Juhi and Song head with him to the left path. With the remaining heading down the middle path, we see Taeshik glaring at Jinwoo right before everyone parts ways. Following Mr. Kim and Kong, we hear the two discuss how easy this dungeon is, reminded of the double dungeon where they abandoned Jinwoo. Having made up his mind, Mr. Kim states that after the mission is over, he'll personally apologize to Jinwoo for abandoning him, having been using his family as an excuse. But now, if he wants to continue priding himself as a hunter, Mr. Kim must own up to his wrongdoings. With Kong wondering if Jinwoo will forgive them, Mr. Kim states that it doesn't matter, but just then we cut to Taeshik and the criminals. As the criminals mercilessly clean up the goblins, Taeshik mentions how the monsters are too weak, asking the criminals if they would be able to slay humans just like they would magical beasts. It's revealed that Taeshik was contacted recently by a father of a victim of the three criminals, learning that the criminals had led the father's daughter to end her own life, and the father's wife to be traumatized by the loss of their daughter. The father begins to grow infuriated, having learnt that the three criminals will be released soon, being able to shorten their sentence by participating in dungeon raids as skilled hunters. Kneeling down, the father offers to pay Taeshik $3 billion, and in exchange Taeshik is to kill the three criminals in the dungeon, where there will be no evidence of what happened. In the present, Taeshik coldly glares at the criminals, announcing that he'll cover up the criminals' deaths by saying they were killed by 100 goblins. Cutting back to Mr. Kim and Kong, we see the two have stumbled onto the same path as Taeshik and the criminals, watching in disbelief as Taeshik strangles the last remaining criminal. Taeshik realizes that Mr. Kim and his tunnels are connected, meaning that Jinwoo's path leads to the boss room. But seeing as there are witnesses, Taeshik decapitates the last criminal, slowly approaching Mr. Kim and Kong. Cutting to Jinwoo, we see him remembering that he had met Taeshik in the hospital, but suddenly everyone hears a blood-curdling scream, prompting Jinwoo and the others to rush towards the noise. Upon reaching the sound, Jinwoo and the others are stunned to see the criminals dead, along with Kong brutally slaughtered. Just then, Jinwoo hears someone breathing, realizing that Mr. Kim is still alive, prompting Juhi to rush over and begin healing Mr. Kim. Seeing Mr. Kim's wounds, Song realizes that the injuries are not from magical beasts, as the wounds were precisely placed away from vital areas, meant to torture the target alive as long as possible. With Mr. Kim not recovering, Mr. Kim mutters that he should just die, but Jinwoo cries that Mr. Kim must live on for his family, making up the excuse that Mr. Kim must live so Jinwoo can hate him. Sad to not be able to officially bow and apologize, Mr. Kim uses his last remaining words to beg for forgiveness from Jinwoo, only to finally pass away. Just then, Taeshik appears from the ceiling, diving towards Juhi with his blade, but Jinwoo perfectly catches Taeshik's hand, impressing Taeshik as he wanted to take out the healer first. Song demands to know why a member of the Hunter Association is acting so crazy, but Taeshik cuts Song off, revealing what he plans to report. Taeshik states that he'll report the criminals who slaughtered Jinwoo and the others. And when the criminals attempted to attack Taeshik, Taeshik had no choice but to put down all the criminals, grinning at his own scheme. With Jinwoo pissed at Taeshik's disgusting words, Song asks everyone to step back, picking up Mr. Kim's blade and offering to slay Taeshik himself. Song begins assessing the situation, knowing that Taeshik is B rank, a rank higher than his C rank. But Song calls for Juhi to enhance him with a physical enhancement spell, betting on the fact that an assassin type like Taeshik will have a weak defense. Happy to be challenged, Taeshik reveals that he knows Song is a mage type, dashing in to strike Song down, but Song manages to parry the blow. As Taeshik mocks Song's pathetic swordplay, Song manages to cut Taeshik in half, but realizes that it was Taeshik's afterimage. Going on the offense, Song continues to force Taeshik back, impressing Jinwoo as Song is able to barely keep up with Taeshik's agility. But Taeshik speeds up, ultimately outmatching Song and lands a slash on Song. As Jui steps up to heal Song's wounds, Taeshik takes the opportunity to cut Jui down, but Song catches up, forcing Taeshik to focus on him. Annoyed that Song is giving him such a hard time, Song reveals that he is currently teaching a S-rank hunter, but Taeshik simply speeds up faster, cutting Song up as he darts around the dungeon. With Jui no longer able to cast any spells, Taeshik slowly approaches the wounded Song, opting to end their duel, but suddenly Song reveals a powerful fire spell, encasing Taeshik in fire. Sadly, Taeshik managed to barely escape, commending Song's sly tactics. As Taeshik begins to bring his blade down on Song once and for all, Jinwoo suddenly intervenes, forcing Taeshik to leap back, demanding to know how Jinwoo appeared in front of him. Jinwoo reiterates that he is an E-rank hunter, but Taeshik knows that Jinwoo is way too fast to be an E-rank hunter, wondering if Jinwoo is an assassin type 2. Taeshik deduces that Jinwoo must be hiding his powers, remembering Jinwoo as that boy that survived the double dungeon, deducing that Jinwoo has in fact double awakened. As Taeshik gets serious, Jinwoo demands to know Taeshik's true motives, prompting Taeshik to reveal that he was hired to slay the criminals that hurt an innocent civilian. Jinwoo ignores Taeshik's lies, demanding to know why Taeshik tortured Kong and Mr. Kim, asking Taeshik to reveal his true motive. As Taeshik puts on a disturbing grin, it's revealed that Taeshik had purposely joined the Hunters Association as he loved killing people over magical beasts. As Taeshik leaps forward, he begins clashing blades with Jinwoo, vanishing as Jinwoo cuts his afterimage. With both Jinwoo and Taeshik speeding up, Song is shocked to see Jinwoo's immense speed, but Jinwoo and Taeshik note how they are both similar in strength and speed. Taeshik states that his battle experience will ultimately allow him to win against Jinwoo, kicking some dust into Jinwoo's face, only to swiftly cut Jinwoo up. Seeing Taeshik so gleeful, Jinwoo notices that a system terminal has appeared, having sent someone with bloodlust nearby, and has assigned Jinwoo to slay them. Now with no other option, Jinwoo begins to relax, hopping from side to side, which weirds Taeshik out, but suddenly Jinwoo dashes in close, landing a slash on Taeshik, which applies poison. As Jinwoo continues to barrage Taeshik with strikes, Taeshik praises Jinwoo's movements, suddenly disappearing as he reveals his stealth skill, able to hide his body, sound, and scent from the enemy, a rare skill even among assassins. Taeshik mentions that no one has lived after seeing his stealth skill, able to land a strike on Jinwoo's leg, bringing Jinwoo to his knees. When Jui cries Jinwoo's name, Taeshik orders Juhi to be quiet, but seeing Taeshik bully Juhi, Jinwoo makes use of a full recovery, standing back up. Shocked to see Jinwoo use a healing spell, Taeshik senses a potent aura from him, which Jinwoo utters that he shouldn't waste his anger and scum like Taeshik. Seeing Jinwoo's cold glare, Taeshik deduces that Jinwoo has also taken another human life, declaring that great power is a curse in itself. As Taeshik disappears, he dashes to cut down Jinwoo, but Jinwoo nonchalantly blocks all of Taeshik's strikes, able to sense incoming attacks based on Taeshik's killing intent. As a final trump card, Jinwoo activates his murderous intent, finally able to pin down Taeshik's location, only to drive his dagger into Taeshik's body. As Taeshik lays on the dungeon floor defeated, he congratulates the monster that Jinwoo is, asking who Jinwoo truly is. Jinwoo reveals that he doesn't know, but as the bleed effects of Jinwoo's dagger start tearing away at Taeshik's body, Taeshik grins, spotting Jinwoo's shadow blend in with the infinite void of the dungeon's darkness. Having won the duel, Jinwoo is awarded skill points and a rune stone for the stealth skill, but Jinwoo can only think about how much of himself he's losing the stronger he gets. With Juhi and Song thanking Jinwoo, Jinwoo asks the two to leave the dungeon, personally heading to defeat the dungeon boss. Cutting to Jinchul, we see him arrive on the scene, thinking about how he knew Taeshik was suspicious, but wonders who could have killed him. Upon seeing the survivors, Jinchul is shocked to see Jinwoo, amazed that he looks like a different person. Getting straight to the point, Jinchul demands to know who killed Taeshik. But before Jinwoo can reveal it was him, Song speaks up announcing that he along with Jui defeated Taeshik, which Jinchul finds suspicious, but asks Song and everyone to report what happened. Seeing Jinchul now, Jinwoo realizes that Jinchul has an immense aura, being an A-rank hunter, but thanks Song for covering up his power. With the man that hired Taeshik arrested, we cut to Jinwoo and Jui finishing up their reports, only for Juhee to show Jinwoo the essence stone he gave to her in the double dungeon. A couple of minutes earlier, Jui had confessed that she knows she is surprised by Jinwoo's change, admitting that she herself should be taking on A-rank, B-rank, and C-rank dungeons. Jui does mention that she was able to meet Jinwoo through taking on weaker dungeons, handing Jinwoo back the essence stone he gave her. Juhee reveals that she intends to finally retire, shocking Jinwoo, but Jinwoo knows it's what's best for her, accepting the stone and promising to visit her in her hometown. Flashing back, Jinchul is seen speaking to Jinwoo, warning him that Dongseok's younger brother, Hwang Dong-soo, is an S-rank hunter. Jinchul reveals that S-rank hunters have the ability to transcend the law, meaning Jinchul recommends Jinwoo flee the country. But as Jinwoo grips the essence stone, he reasons that he must get stronger quicker in order to fight his battles. The next day, Jinwoo is brought to his first dungeon raid by Jinho, but Jinwoo is weirded out by the other hunters Jinho had gathered. Jinho states that the remaining party members are actually hunters, but they are unable to fight due to certain injuries and addictions. But Jinho reiterates that they should be fine to certify their group for a raid. Looking around, Jinwoo spots a little girl, surprised that someone so young is a hunter, but the girl speaks up, telling Jinwoo not to be rude. Snapping back, Jinwoo deduces that the girl is still in high school and an E-rank, but changing topics, tells everyone that Jinho and himself will be taking on the dungeon alone. Before Jinho and Jinwoo enter the dungeon, Jinho reminds everyone that they will get paid $3 million for simply waiting outside for each raid. But if they tell anyone about the details of these raids, they will be penalized by 10 times the amount. Off to the side, Jinwoo inspects the stealth runestone he got from slaying Taeshik, crushing it, only to be amazed to have obtained the stealth skill. Looking around, Jinwoo notices Jinho all suited up again, but this time with a set of armor that will boost all of Jinho's stats. But as Jinho begins bragging about how rare the armor is, Jinwoo nonchalantly pushes Jinho over with a single finger. Realizing that he'll be a burden to Jinwoo, Jinho takes off everything but his helmet, both heading into the dungeon, all whilst the other party members begin worrying whether they'll make it out alive, scolding them for underestimating the dungeon. At the same time, we cut to Jino at school, sad to see that her best friend Songi is skipping school again, who is revealed to be the young girl in Jinwoo's party. With only several minutes passing, Jinwoo's party members notice Jinho jogging out the gate, believing that Jinho and Jinwoo fled, but soon realize that Jinwoo and Jinho were able to solo the dungeon, as the dungeon portal begins to close behind Jinwoo. With Songi and the others shocked, Jinho states that they have 2 other dungeons to raid today, asking everyone to begin heading to their next destination. In the next dungeon, we see Jinwoo draw the attention of all the goblins, waiting for Jinho to acquire as much essence stones as possible, only to dash towards the dungeon boss, instantly decapitating it. With several days passing, Jinwoo continues to grind various dungeons, racking up various levels, and even mastering his stealth skill, which Jinho never knew he had. Stopping for a breather, Jinwoo notes how easy it is to fight whilst invisible, but realizes his dash skill has leveled up. Sensing a beast approaching from behind, Jinwoo makes use of his new dagger-wielding skill and fatal strike skill, puncturing a hole in the beast. As Jinho begins collecting the slain monster's essence stones, Jinwoo begins recharging his mana with a potion, knowing that he should level his intellect attribute as his new skills are draining his mana. Jinwoo assesses his current power, placing himself between an A rank and B rank, still too weak to take on the Demon Castle. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo receives a notification from the system, notifying Jinwoo has reached the right level to take on the job change quest. Cutting elsewhere, we see a businessman, manager on, learn from another employee, Kitchell, that some strike team has paid $150 million to have the right to raid multiple C-rank dungeons. Looking into the raid team, On is shocked to hear the son of the Eugene Construction Company doing something so reckless, but realizes that Sung Jinwoo is part of the strike force, curious as to whether Jinwoo is hiding something. As Jinwoo and Jinho finish up another dungeon, we see on reveal to Kitchell that Jinwoo is quite suspicious, having participated in 3 calamities and survived them all. First was the double dungeon, second was Hwang Dong-suk's Hunter Strike team, and finally was Kong Tae-shuk's murder attempt. With all this in mind, On deduces that Jinwoo is reawakened, heading off to gather more intel on Jinwoo. As On and Kitchell head to Jinwoo's current location, they are both shocked to see several of Jinwoo's party lazing around in front of a dungeon portal. Chatting with Songi, On deduces that Jinho and Jinwoo are taking on the dungeons alone, shocked that he may have discovered something very valuable, quickly leaving for now. As Jinho and Jinwoo appear from the portal, Jinwoo apologizes as he's busy tomorrow, asking Jinho if they can delay their upcoming dungeon raids by a day, but at the same time we see someone listening in on Jinwoo's conversation. Elsewhere, we see a massive distorted flame slowly transforming into a huge ant, all whilst a man stands before the ant. Out of nowhere, we see the man helplessly watch as a woman gets devoured, but we suddenly cut to Choi waking up from a nightmare. Having fallen asleep at his desk, Choi reaches for some top-secret documents, knowing that their raid to retake Jeju Island is near. That same night, we see Jinwoo parting ways with his party members, only to be stopped by On and Kitchell, introducing themselves as members of the White Tiger Guild. As On and Jinwoo sit down for a private chat, On gets straight to the point, offering Jinwoo a position in the White Tiger Guild, and states that he'll pay Jinwoo double of whatever Jinho is paying him. Believing that Jinwoo has no reason to turn down the offer, On is shocked upon hearing that Jinho is paying Jinwoo $30 billion, noting that the White Tiger Guild is valued at around $50 billion altogether. Jinwoo states that he has proof of such an offer from Jinho, but seeing On's flabbergasted face, Jinwoo takes his leave. Stopping for a second, Jinwoo wonders how On figured out who Jinwoo is, instantly disappearing as Jinwoo activates his stealth skill. Slicing On's face, Jinwoo gets On to apologize for snooping around Jinwoo's past, having been searching for rookie hunters to add to their guild, and stumbled upon Jinho and Jinwoo through their recent absurd dungeon raids. With Jinwoo ordering On to not turn around, On adds that only he and Kitchell know about Jinwoo's secret, promising to keep Jinwoo's secret for now. Satisfied, Jinwoo disables his stealth skill, apologizing for taking on the C-rank dungeons, but offers to sell On 3 dungeons for 300 million apiece. On states that C-rank dungeons yield around only 200 million, which Jinwoo had been waiting for, agreeing to sell On the 3 dungeons for 200 million apiece. Having officialized their agreement with a handshake, Jinwoo feeds On a healing potion, heading off and reiterating that On is to not betray him. The next day, Jinho confirms that On did indeed transfer the 600 million, amazed that Jinwoo was able to sell the dungeons that were about to expire. As for On, we see him realize that Jinwoo had scammed him, as all of the C-rank dungeons are now selling from 70 million apiece, impressing On as Jinwoo outwitted him. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo texts On, stating that they are now even for On spying on Jinwoo, which On ultimately admits to, calling it a win now that he has Jinwoo's phone number. At the same time, Jinwoo is seen driving off into the mountains, seemingly focused on this job change quest. With Jinwoo heading into a random, isolated forest, Jinwoo pulls up the job-changing quest terminal, remembering that he's faced multiple types of dungeons before, but this job-changing quest has given him time to prepare. Knowing that the only way to get stronger is to take on all the quests granted by the system, Jinwoo accepts, prompting a massive purple portal to begin forming. Just then, Jinwoo realizes that he still needs to do his daily quest, or he'll get penalized, but he'll complete the daily quest when he gets back, heading into the portal. At the same time, we see Jinho sitting at dinner with his father, only for Jinho's older brother, Jin-sung, to arrive. With Jinwoo heading through the halls of the dungeon, he reads that he can't use any potions or his full recoveries and can't leave until he completes the dungeon, meaning Jinwoo will have to be more careful during battle. Hearing something approaching, Jinwoo immediately equips his dagger, spotting an armored knight approaching. Seeing the knight move so slowly, Jinwoo dashes forward, attempting to cut the knight down, but no luck. Switching to defense, Jinwoo blocks the knight's advances, leaping back only to lunge forwards with his fatal strike skill, but his dagger is unable to pierce the knight's armor. Annoyed, Jinwoo continues to weave around the knight, opting to use his sheer strength to tear apart the knight. Having defeated the knight, Jinwoo realizes he's wasted mana, but has no time to think as he senses several other knights approaching. Back with Jinho, we see him ashamed to look at his father, prompting his father to ask Jinsung what starting his guild is like. Smirking, Jinsung reveals that although he's failed to recruit hunters in their country, Jinsung states that he has begun negotiations with hunters from Europe and the Middle East. Turning to Jinho, Jinsung says he knows Jinho is working on something on his own, but warns Jinho to not interfere with hunters Jinsung is talking to. Looking down, Jinho thinks about how he has a trump card, choosing to keep Jinwoo's existence a secret for now. Following Jinwoo, he makes use of his raw maneuvers to take apart the knights, noting how he's using a lot of stamina, but suddenly equips his daggers, puncturing the air behind him, revealed to be a stealth assassin. On top of that, Jinwoo dodges an incoming spell, spotting a mage from afar, wondering why the armor from these monsters seemed familiar to Kasakasa's. Seeing a variation of monster attack, Jinwoo begins assessing the situation, noting that knights need to be defeated with strength, assassins need to be detected, and the long-ranged attackers need to be avoided with agility. Seeing as he doesn't have long-ranged attacks of his own, Jinwoo wonders how he'll defeat the mages and archers. Spotting his fatigue hits 65 already, but at the same time we see Choi and his guild head out to somewhere. With Jinwoo able to overcome this wave of knights, Jinwoo slurps down water, checking out the item drops from the knights, simultaneously equipping different pieces of items. Jinwoo is amazed that the armor can become invisible whilst also not restricting any of his movements. Checking his stats and the loot he gathered, Jinwoo knows that he's getting stronger, choosing to wait and recover from his fatigue, only to head deeper into the dungeon. In front of a large set of doors, Jinwoo pries the doors open, feeling a chilling breeze brush down his spine. Continuing into the next room, Jinwoo stands before a throne room, taking a battle stance as he spots a red knight appear, reminding him of what fear felt like. Seeing the knight commander, Igris the Bloodred's title is red, Jinwoo knows he'll have a rough time. Shocked to see Igris appear right in front of him. Barely able to block Igris's blade, Jinwoo is sent flying across the room, all whilst Igris continues to pursue Jinwoo, dicing everything in its way. Going on the offense, Jinwoo notes how monstrously quick Igris is, choosing to overpower Igris. But Igris meets Jinwoo's dagger, infusing its blade with electricity when Jinwoo gets close. Deducing that Igris is as quick as himself, Jinwoo knows that Igris is far more stronger and durable than himself, choosing to unequip his daggers and use his bare fist to break through. Surprisingly, Igris tosses his weapons aside, choosing to fight chivalrously. Elsewhere, we see Jinchul greeting Go Gunhee, both remarking that a big event is finally starting. At that moment, Gunhee receives a call from Choi, who thanks Gunhee for approving their raid of Jeju Island, stating that they will now begin scouting the island before they raid it. Back with Jinwoo, Jinwoo is even more surprised to see Igris' speed increase, forced against a wall as Igris pummels Jinwoo with punches. Having escaped, Jinwoo notes how he's still damaged, even though he blocked all of Igris' attacks. Knowing that he needs to speed up, Jinwoo activates his dash, dancing around Igris, only to begin attacking Igris. As the battle draws on, Jinwoo notices Igris matching and surpassing his speed, grabbing a hold of Jinwoo only to toss him into the air. Following up, Igris tosses some rubble at Jinwoo, following up by kicking Jinwoo into a nearby pillar. Dashing forth, Jinwoo attempts to catch Igris off guard, managing to land a powerful kick on Igris' head, seeing Igris faint, but suddenly Igris wakes up, replying with a kick of his own. Running after Jinwoo, Igris drags Jinwoo against the throne room's wall, only to toss Jinwoo to the other side of the room, who coincidentally collapses onto the throne itself. As Igris approaches Jinwoo, we see that Jaina has just finished making dinner for Jinwoo, heading into her room to study. With Igris calling back his sword, he raises his blade into the air, flawlessly bringing it down onto Jinwoo. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo catches Igris's sword, disarming Igris, only to equip his own dagger, plunging it into Igris's eyes. With Igris distracted, Jinwoo continues to push Igris back, smashing him against a wall, taking back his dagger, only to re-equip it, driving it into Igris's neck, this time channeling all of his skills to ensure it pierces Igris's armor. With a system terminal confirming that Jinwoo had defeated Igris, Jinwoo collapses to the ground, spotting that he had received 1.5 million gold, Igris's S-Rank helmet that grants Jinwoo 20 strength and vitality stat points, and finally a runestone for the ruler's hand skill. Realizing that he was also given an instant teleportation stone to leave the dungeon, Jinwoo suddenly sees hundreds of portals open nearby, learning that he needs to last as long as he can in order to earn enhancement points for the best class possible. With a timer starting, hundreds of knights begin to flood the throne room. But compared to Igris, Jinwoo knows he can take on these knights. Seeing as the wave of knights aren't stopping, Jinwoo chooses to use 200 mana to activate his stealth skill, sneaking around a pillar and noting how every second of stealth costs 1 mana, meaning he has 190 seconds left of stealth. Just then, one of the mages activates a tracking spell, breaking Jinwoo's stealth, forcing Jinwoo to activate his murderous intent, destroying the knights that are charging at him. With all his mana gone and his health low, Jinwoo reasons he should leave with the teleportation stone, but out of nowhere a knight manages to sneak up on Jinwoo, knocking the teleportation stone out of his hand, prompting the remaining hundreds of knights to begin swarming Jinwoo. Completely cornered, Jinwoo admits that he doesn't know where the teleportation stone is, rushing towards the crowd to dismantle a few of them. With Jinwoo's stamina and mana already depleted, Jinwoo steals his resolve, continuing to push through the endless swarm of knights. Able to trade blow for blow with most of the knights, Jinwoo states that he is very familiar with the feeling of despair, but with his vision beginning to dull and his movements slowing down, Jinwoo hears a voice reminding him that Jinwoo is named the weakest hunter for a reason. Beginning to hear all sorts of voices whilst Jinwoo gets beaten down, Jinwoo suddenly feels Song asking him to relax and rest, suddenly imagining someone familiar appear before him. Recognizing the voice, Jinwoo hears the voice ask him to give up as Jinwoo has already come so far. But as Jinwoo looks up, he's terrified to see his former self beckon him to give up. Cutting elsewhere, we see Go Gunny regret not being fit enough to help out in the third failed Jeju Island raid, hearing that Jinchul was a security guard that helped everyone communicate. Gunny states that many lives were lost in the failed raid, but Gunny knows that the only way to overcome said traumas and fears is to defeat and surpass said hurdles. Back with Jinwoo, he is shocked to see how different his former self is, terrified when his former self agrees with him. His former self begins berating how weak Jinwoo is, but Jinwoo suddenly senses something approaching, barely able to leap out of the trajectory of a sword slash. With his former self continuing to mock how pathetic Jinwoo looks, Jinwoo attempts to avoid the approaching knights, but gets caught off guard, having his face smashed into the ground. Finally unable to move and his vision slowly slipping, Jinwoo hears his former self scold him for being cocky and not more prepared, slowly beginning to believe that he had wasted his second chance at life, ironically dying at the hands of statues once more. Just then, Jinwoo spots a system terminal pop up, notifying Jinwoo that he failed to finish his daily quest and will be transferred to the penalty zone. With Jinwoo's former self congratulating Jinwoo for being lucky, Jinwoo finally falls unconscious only to wake up in the penalty wasteland, happy to see that the system must be cheering him on. Immediately purchasing several potions to recover his stamina, Jinwoo tries to replenish his health with potions. But Jinwoo learns that potions can't heal people that are below a certain amount of health and can only be healed naturally over time or after a level up. Just then several centipedes appear, but luckily Jinwoo notices their names are in orange font, immediately dashing forward only to equip his dagger, easily dismantling them all. At the same time, we follow Jaina, who has woken up. Spotting the meal she made Jinwoo is still there, wondering if Jinwoo got a girlfriend and hopes that Jinwoo remembered she has a parent-teacher interview the next day. Having slayed all the centipedes, Jinwoo is happy that level-ups completely restore his health and mana, heading into the system shop to prepare with the remaining 10 minutes he has. Spotting the Night Killer sword, Jinwoo immediately purchases the blade, as the sword does 25% more damage to the armored beast. Next, Jinwoo crushes the rune stone that Igris dropped, obtaining the skill Ruler's Hand, a skill that doesn't require mana, and is the skill Igris used to retrieve his sword without needing to touch it. Trying the skill out on the corpse of a centipede, Jinwoo is notified that he can't pick anything too big, but seeing as his time in the penalty zone is up, Jinwoo braces himself for the endless swarm once more. As Jinwoo is transported back to the throne room, we cut to Choi chatting with Cha, apologizing for putting Cha through something so painful, but Cha reassures Choi that this is nothing compared to what the fallen hunters had to go through. As Choi is notified of approaching enemies, we cut back to Jinwoo, able to now easily destroy the knights surrounding him. But Jinwoo notes how strange it is that the swarm is endless and he isn't leveling up. Upon spotting a mage in the crowd, Jinwoo wonders why he hasn't been hit by any of the mage's spells yet, but suddenly realizes that mage is using summoning magic and creating these endless knights. Leaping into the air, Jinwoo tosses his dagger at the mage, instantly killing the mage along with all of the mage's summons. With the system finally notifying Jinwoo of a monster slain, Jinwoo activates his stealth, luring all the remaining mages to track Jinwoo down, and in exchange Jinwoo spots 5 mages tracking his location. Retrieving his dagger with his ruler's hand, Jinwoo immediately slays another mage, bringing the total to 4. Making use of his ruler's hand, Jinwoo crushes the armor of a knight from afar, only to follow up by dragging another mage towards him, bringing the total down to 3. Sensing the 3 mages nearby, Jinwoo watches as the 3 mages combine their magic to summon a golem from the armor of the fallen, prompting Jinwoo to position himself above the golem. Able to run past the golem, Jinwoo begins making his way towards the remaining mages, able to evade the golem's punch, only to dash forth and slay the remaining 3 mages. Sensing the golem is still active, Jinwoo is forced to block the golem's attack with his dagger, ultimately punching a hole in the golem, finally ending the job change quest. Excited to see what types of job titles he will get to pick from, Jinwoo gets weirded out when the system terminal begins uttering cryptic lines, spotting the word Shadow Army highlighted. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo sees that he has acquired the Necromancy class, annoyed as necromancers are magic types who rely on their undead summons, whereas Jinwoo has been focusing on an assassin-type build. Fearing that he'll have to switch to a more passive role, Jinwoo chooses to deny the Necromancer role, but the system terminal reveals that the Necromancer role is a hidden class, giving Jinwoo another chance to reconsider. As Jinwoo walks around weighing the pros and cons, Jinwoo uses the mages that summon the knights as reference for the potential of the Necromancer class, coupled with the fact that the dungeons seem to be testing him, ultimately convincing Jinwoo. On top of that, Jinwoo can still be on the front line, and will have an army to fight alongside him, prompting Jinwoo to accept the Necromancer class. Upon accepting the quest, a dark smog begins wrapping around Jinwoo, all whilst the terminal rewards Jinwoo bonus points for exceeding the expected time, not using the teleportation stone, having more than 50% health remaining, and having defeated all the enemies. The system terminal notifies Jinwoo that he is able to upgrade his current class, completely consuming Jinwoo with darkness only for the darkness to swell into a ball, only to erupt. Jinwoo sees that his Necromancer class has been upgraded to Shadow Monarch, along with several other unique skills and 10 ability points. Shocked that everything happened so fast, suddenly seeing a dark shadow appear around the corpses of the defeated knights, spotting the word Shadow Extraction near the knights' bodies. The system terminal suddenly asks Jinwoo for a keyword to activate Shadow Extraction, but after a few seconds of thinking, Jinwoo chooses the words Arise. Out of nowhere, hundreds of Shadow Knights begin forming from the corpses of the defeated knights, shocking Jinwoo as he also sees that the skills Shadow Extraction and Shadow Storage allows him to use up mana to summon Shadow Soldiers along with storing and summoning whenever he likes. Knowing that the chances of shadow extraction change depending on strength of target along with time of death, spotting his Shadow Knight and mages are regular rank and level 1. Just then, Jinwoo wonders if he can extract S rank and A rank targets, heading over to Igris. Seeing as there is a limit to how many shadow soldiers Jinwoo can keep, Jinwoo releases 11 existing soldiers, getting serious as Jinwoo cries for Igris to arise. With a powerful gust of wind bursting from Igris's corpse, Jinwoo unfortunately sees that his shadow extraction has failed, spotting that he has 2 more tries. Taking a deep breath, Jinwoo is pissed that Igris is not becoming one of his shadow soldiers, meaning Jinwoo only has 1 try left. Crying that the former King Igris is clinging to is no longer with him, Jinwoo states that Igris's abilities shouldn't be wasted, as Jinwoo offers Igris to serve him. With the final chant of Arise, Jinwoo smirks, sensing a powerful aura beginning to form, ultimately birthing the new shadow soldier Igris. With the system terminal notifying Jinwoo of his successful shadow extraction, it asks what Jinwoo will name his new level 7 Knight rank shadow soldier, but without a moment of hesitation, Jinwoo chooses to stick with the name Igris. As Igris and Jinwoo's shadow army kneel before Jinwoo, we cut to Choi and his guild, all completely shocked as they realize the ants they once knew are evolving, having sprouted wings. Returning home, Jinwoo catches up on some well-earned rest, waking up to Jaina calling him to remind him of her parent-teacher interviews. Dressing up, Jinwoo shocks Jaina, wondering if the man before her is truly her brother. As the duo walk through the halls, Jinwoo captivates the other students, but when Jaina offers to set Jinwoo up, Jinwoo pinches Jaina for teasing him. Sitting down with Jaina's teacher, Jinwoo is happy to hear Jaina is doing well in school, being kind and a role model for others, along with performing well on her mock exam, having potential to get into medical school. Before Jinwoo leaves, the teacher asks if Jinwoo would allow Jaina to become a hunter if she were to awaken, but without a second thought, Jinwoo says he wants to keep Jaina as far away from being a hunter as possible. As the teacher asks for Jinwoo's help, we cut to later that evening where Seongi is passing by. Spotting Jinwoo is waiting for her, showing Seongi a picture of himself and Jaina. Jinwoo confirms Seongi is friends with his sister, stating that as an E-rank hunter, Seongi won't last long as a hunter. Not wanting to stop being a hunter, Seongi demands that Jinwoo leave her alone, but having expected such a reaction, Jinwoo asks that Seongi follow him. At the same time, we see Jinchul awaiting someone's arrival, formally greeting the S-rank hunter Hwang Dong-soo. Jinchul points out it's rare for Dong-soo to be visiting the country he betrayed, knowing Dong-soo is trying to search for Jinwoo and Jinho. Annoyed, Dong-soo asks that Jinchul and his surveillance team turn a blind eye to what he is about to do, challenging them to stop him if they dare. Following Choi, he reports the evolution of the ants to Gunhee, stating that the ant they found had passed away, failing to fly over the ocean. But one day the ants will succeed. That night, Jinwoo greets An and Hyun, apologizing for the sudden call, but An is just grateful Jinwoo reached out to them. As An hears Seongi will be joining Jinwoo, An reminds Jinwoo that Jinwoo will be participating in their guild's training in a C-rank gate. Just then, a man calls out to An, asking him to speed things up. Introduced as Kim Chul, an A-rank hunter and the tanker leader of the assault team. An apologizes since Chul is quite annoyed having to take care of 2 newbies, but reassures Jinwoo that the assault team is also comprised of 1 A-rank hunter, 5 B-rank hunters, and 2 C-ranks. Adding Jinwoo and Seongi makes a 10-member squad. Jinwoo is disappointed seeing Seongi excited, alluding to a special quest he needs to take care of in this upcoming raid, but just like that the squad prepare to head into the gate. As Jinwoo follows after the leader, Jinwoo suddenly detects a strange aura from the gate, all turning to see the blue gate has transformed into a red one. Attempting to rush out, Jinwoo only manages to cry for An and Hyun to contact their guilds for help, alerting Baek that a red gate has appeared. Back with Jinwoo, he's horrified to see they've been placed in a snowy biome, a phenomenon caused by a red gate. Seongi asks Jinwoo what a red gate is, learning that a red gate is quite rare, replacing normal gates, and can only be conquered when the dungeon boss is defeated or the dungeon collapses, restricting any help from the outside world. At that exact moment, Two icicles are shot at the squad, one striking a C-rank hunter, but Jinwoo protects Songi from the other, drawing the attention of B-rank hunter Park Heejin. Seeing as the attackers are ice elves hidden in the nearby forest, Jinwoo knows the elves intentionally targeted the weakest of the squad first. Relieved, he has grown stronger as the elves scurry away. Seeing Songi horrified, Jinwoo states the ice elves are known as ice slayers, but just then Chul takes charge, stating their C-rank raid has become a B-rank quest. Chul promises to protect everyone, suggesting that they now split into two teams, stating those who follow him will survive, whereas the others who remain in their place will perish. Before a C-rank hunter can join Chul's team, Chul pushes them back, stating that he'll only take B-rank or higher hunters, stating that 1 day in the gate is equivalent to 1 hour outside, so dead weight is not needed in his party. Before Chul can head off, Heejin offers to stay with Jinwoo, whispering that she has impressed Jinwoo, noticed the ice arrow even before Chul did, believing Jinwoo to be at least A rank or greater. Chul states he'll take the main road into the forest, leaving behind the 4 others, only to stumble onto something in the forest. Spotting bear markings, Chul declares Jinwoo and the others will perish, but wonders why he considered Jinwoo the leader in the group they left behind. Out of nowhere, Chul orders his men to take formation, watching as various bears appear from the forest, scaring Chul's men. As a bear swipes at Chul, he raises his shield, shattering the bear's claws only to slice the bear into 2. At the same time, Jinwoo and the others head through the forest as well, told by Heejin that they're in ice bear territory and that they should leave as soon as possible. Jinwoo corrects Heejin, stating that as long as the weak ice bears are around, the smart elves won't appear, meaning it'll be safer in the forest. Seeing as it's quite cold, Jinwoo opens his inventory, retrieving several fur coats, catching the attention of others who know only high-ranked hunters can use subspace magic. With everyone warm and cozy, Songi asks who Jinwoo is, prompting Jinwoo to offer to help everyone, but in return they're not allowed to ask questions or boss him around. Appearing from the forest, a massive bear comes rushing at the gang, but Jinwoo asks everyone to stand back as he prepares to fight. Outside the gate, Baek fails to enter the red gate, hoping that Chul and some other hunters deal with the dungeon boss. On apologizes as he reveals that Jinwoo is also inside the gate, uttering that although Jinwoo is E-rank on believes him to be reawakened. At that moment, a car pulls up, outstepping Dong-soo. Baek demands to know why Dong-soo is here of all places, taunted by Dong-soo for allowing E-ranks into his gate. Annoyed, Jinwoo will pass before he can get to him. Back with Jinwoo, we see him annihilate the bears attacking him, impressed he had managed to level up. At night, the others are amazed Jinwoo single-handedly took out the bears, suspecting they must be close to the bear's lair, but they all wonder what Jinwoo is doing now. Having arrived at the bear's nest, Jinwoo calls for his shadow army to appear, prompting his knights to erupt from his shadow, all clashing with the horde of bears. Although the bears are able to tear through Jinwoo's shadow army, they simply revive in exchange for Jinwoo's MP. As the final boss bear shows its face, it eradicates all of Jinwoo's army with a roar, draining Jinwoo's MP completely. With no other choice, Jinwoo sends an Igris who coldly marches towards the bear. In an instant, Igris slashes at the bear's arm, blinking away as to evade the bear's attacks. Dashing back in, Idris punctures the bear from behind, following up by slashing at the bear's legs only to force it onto its knees. Before the bear can roar, Igris decapitates it, serving its head to Jinwoo. Jinwoo admits that he would have lost if Igris used his sword when they fought, and even now Igris may be stronger than Jinwoo himself. As Jinwoo wraps up the battle, we cut to Chul and his men, all being picked off one by the devious ice elves. With Chul unable to prevent his men from being slaughtered, Chul says he must survive and claim his title as an elite in the White Tiger Guild, choosing to flee from the leader of the ice elves. Having slaughtered the horde of bears, Jinwoo orders for the corpses to arise, giving birth to an army of shadow ice bears. Back outside the gate, Baek feels terrible hearing on report the raid team has been inside the red gate for 3 days, the equivalent of 3 hours outside. Annoyed that his F-rank target will be dead, Dong-soo begins to leave, but suddenly stops to ask why a F rank like Jinwoo would be part of the White Tiger's strike team. Terrified, On admits that he is acquainted with Jinwoo and had offered Jinwoo to train with the strike team. Satisfied, Dong-soo turns to leave, suddenly blinking in close only to strangle On in the air. Dong-soo knows On is a very capable man, asking what he's hiding about Jinwoo, but Baek intervenes, ordering Dong-soo to let On go. As Dong-soo releases On, both Baek and Dong-soo's aura erupt, scaring onlookers as they fear what may happen when two S-rank hunters clash. Both ready for battle, Dong-soo and Baek fire off a single punch, causing a massive explosion. Cutting to Chul, he's seen hiding away from the Ice Elves, blaming his lack of equipment and resources as the reason he lost. Stumbling onto the corpses of the Ice Bears, Chul refuses to believe Jinwoo's party of E-ranks massacred the bears, believing the Ice Elves had killed off the bears and is chasing him down. As Chul frantically rushes back through the forest, we cut back outside where Dong-soo praises Jinchul for intercepting both of their fists, having stepped in between, but Jinchul thanks the S-rank monsters for holding back so as to not kill him. Jinchul states that his surveillance team had confirmed Jinwoo is still at F-rank 2 months ago, and as for Dong-soo's brother, the surveillance team had also confirmed Hwang Dong-suk was slayed by magical beasts. Not buying any of it, Dong-soo still blames Jinho, confusing Jinchul as to why Jinwoo is involved, but Dong-soo admits he simply wants an excuse to kill them both. Suddenly receiving a message, Dong-soo praises Jinwoo for being lucky, forced to leave the scene as Jinchul helps escort Dong-soo elsewhere. With On keeping Jinwoo's powers a secret, we cut back to Jinwoo's party, all enjoying their time by a warm fire telling stories, all whilst Chul glares at them, demanding to know how such weaklings are still alive. Seeing the weaklings so cozy, Chul calls out to them, storming towards them as he reveals his entire team had been wiped out. Having lost his mind, Chul believes the weaklings had intentionally hid all the supplies from them, blaming them for his own shortcomings, only to declare Hee-jin as the culprit. Having declared everyone as guilty, Chul raises his blade, ordering everyone to confess. But as they all helplessly watch Chul rush them, Jinwoo arrives, smashing Chul's head into the snow, knocking him out. Annoyed at Chul's pathetic attitude, Jinwoo calls for the monsters nearby to reveal themselves, watching as the Ice Elves uncloak themselves. Sensing a powerful aura, Jinwoo easily identifies the leader of the Ice Elves, pissed hearing the leader praise the humans for surviving so long. The leader is amazed Jinwoo can understand and speak their language, confusing Jinwoo and his party as well, but more importantly, the leader of the elves state that one of his men wants to personally challenge Jinwoo. Recognizing the volunteer as the Ice Elf from earlier, Jinwoo instantly decapitates the challenger, asking what the leader will do now. Dashing in close, the leader easily parries Jinwoo's blade, forcing Jinwoo back. Having managed to cut down the leader's ride, the leader demands to know why Jinwoo is pretending to be human. The leader reveals that a voice in his head orders them to slay all humans. But when facing Jinwoo, the leader can't hear the voice, something Jinwoo believes must be similar to the system notifications, believing it to be because of his title as a player. The leader says they can resolve things easier if Jinwoo handed over the humans, and in exchange Jinwoo will be left alone. But Jinwoo is more curious as to who the elves are. Before the leader can give a reply, a strange glitch occurs, overriding what the leader was about to say, and instead forces the leader to repeat his offer to Jinwoo. Confused at first, Jinwoo states that he won't be handing over his friends, but the leader reminds Jinwoo he is outnumbered. Smirking, Jinwoo orders his shadow army to appear, swarming the battlefield as Hee-jin realizes that Jinwoo has so many summons. With the leader of the Ice Elves ordering his men to rush Jinwoo's shadow army, the Ice Elves begin to be overrun by Jinwoo's immortal army. Following Hee-jin and the others, we see them running for cover, forcing Jinwoo to slay several archers who have their bows drawn ready to shoot down the trio. Jinwoo notes how the leader is confident since his army of elves are very strong, easily fighting back and draining Jinwoo's mana. But to make things worse, the leader is someone Jinwoo knows is stronger than him. As the leader makes his way towards Jinwoo, Jinwoo fears it'll be a difficult fight, even with Igris by his side. racking his brain to obtain stronger soldiers to help him win. With the leader of the Ice Elves revealing his name to be Barca, both Barca and Jinwoo start their duel, forcing Jinwoo to attack from above, but Barca manages to pin Jinwoo's blade down. Luckily, Jinwoo sends his blade back into his inventory, catching Barca off guard when he retrieves his blade and slashes at Barca. Barely able to defend, Barca matches Jinwoo's speed, kicking him away, only to declare that Jinwoo is the strongest opponent he's had in a while. Out of nowhere, Barca is suddenly hit by a massive fireball, revealed to be the work of the mages in Jinwoo's army. But at the same time, we see Chul has awoken. Barely remembering Jinwoo as the one who knocked him out, Chul spots Jinwoo off in the distance, rushing Jinwoo from behind all whilst Barca attacks from the front. Having anticipated Chul waking up, Jinwoo smashes the ground to create a smoke screen, only to call for Igris to take Chul's life. As Chul takes his last few breaths cursing at Jinwoo, Jinwoo shows no remorse, ordering Chul to arise. Having been made part of Jinwoo's shadow army, Chul intercepts Barca's attacks, forcing Barca to jump back, all whilst Jinwoo gives Chul the new name of Iron. Now acting as the tank, Iron roars, taunting Barca to chase after him, all whilst Jinwoo hides behind Iron. Off to the side, Sony asks Heejin if the massacre before them is what normal hunter raids are like, but Heejin states she has never personally experienced anything of this caliber. With Barca bored of fighting Iron, he orders Jinwoo and Igris to join the fight, making it a 3-on-1. Crazy enough, Barca manages to keep up with the three, easily evading and knocking everyone back, but when Iron taunts Barca, Igris goes in for a sneak attack, but even still Barca detects the bloodlust, evading Igris' sword. Spotting an opening, Jinwoo manages to puncture Barca from behind, but fails to land a lethal blow. Barca mocks Jinwoo for underestimating him, but Jinwoo points out how Barca's ice elves are being dismantled, infuriating Barca. As Barca rushes towards Jinwoo, Jinwoo tosses his blade at Barca, who easily evades the blade, but Jinwoo makes use of his ruler's hand, pulling the blade in close for an attack from behind. Forced to turn around, Barca defends against the flying blade, but this gives Jinwoo the opening to order Iron to grab hold of Barca, allowing Jinwoo's shadow mages to bombard Barca. Still alive, Barca ferociously searches for Jinwoo, realizing that Jinwoo had used stealth to sneak in close and land a lethal blow. Refusing to give up, Barca is unfortunately beaten into the ground by Iron, finally giving Jinwoo the notification that he has defeated Barca. Seeing Iron hammering away at Barca's corpse, Jinwoo orders Iron to hold back, but Iron takes the chance to celebrate a victory with the Shadow Mages. As Jinwoo heads back to the trio, he reassures everyone that it's over, pointing them all to the exit portal of the dungeon. But first, Jinwoo must make use of Barca's corpse. Back outside the gate, Beck states that it's been 7 hours since the red gate opened. Asked by Anna to head home and rest, but Beck says his men are inside so he can't rest easily. Seeing the red gate turn blue, Beck excitedly awaits Chul's appearance, but instead spots Heejin and a C-rank hunter appear. Walking close behind, Jinwoo and Songi appear, exciting On as he knew he could rely on Jinwoo. But suddenly the gate closes. Beck wonders where the others are, confused as to why only the weakest survived, stopping Jinwoo as he has some questions. Brushing off Beck's request, Jinwoo asks for Beck to speak with his surviving guild members, but Beck reminds Jinwoo he is ordering Jinwoo to explain the situation. Sensing Beck's glare, Jinwoo glares back, reminding Beck that he should be grateful not every member of his guild had passed away, prompting Beck to back off, apologizing for being so unprofessional. As Jinwoo drives Songi home, Beck asks Heejin who Jinwoo is, learning that Jinwoo defeated the dungeon by himself, but suddenly acted strange towards the end. Beck orders On to recruit Jinwoo no matter what, cutting to Jinwoo who has just dropped Songi off, confused upon seeing Songi acting so shy. As Jinwoo drives home, he reveals that he had failed to turn Barca into a shadow soldier, believing Barca was way too strong. As Jinwoo freshens up, he notes how Chul was his third human kill, suddenly breaking character as Jaina calls him for dinner. The next morning, Jinwoo greets Jinho, once again weirded out by his gear, but nonetheless heads over to pick up Songi. Jinho is confused, seeing as Songi and Jinwoo are very close. But as Jinho reminds Jinwoo that Songi is still underage, the trio head off to their next mission. Within their next dungeon, Jinho is mesmerized by learning of Jinwoo's new shadow army, watching as they dispatch the dungeon monsters only to begin extracting the essence stones from said dungeon. With Jinho feeling useless, he's given some essence stones to cheer him up, but elsewhere we see several hunters quivering at the sight of a monster. As the hunters beg for their lives, the monster reveals itself to be human, asking how they can head home. Cutting to Jinwoo and Jinho, they celebrate the completion of their 19 dungeon raids as agreed upon. But Jinho mentions he still needs to pass a written exam to be considered an official guild master. Jinho wonders what Jinwoo will do next, hearing that Jinwoo will disappear for a while, but Jinho accuses Jinwoo of thinking he is weak. Seeing Jinho drunk, Jinwoo listens to Jinho reveal his rocky relationship with his older brother 10 years wiser than him, wishing that Jinwoo was his older brother instead. Seeing Jinho spill his heart out, Jinwoo says he'll treat Jinho like a little brother moving forward, continuing to shower Jinwoo with compliments. Elsewhere, the mysterious monster had revealed he was a hunter trapped in a dungeon for 10 years, and had managed to escape, resulting in him appearing in America. The men guarding him mention how the hunter only speaks Japanese, having asked SSS-RANK Dongsu to help with interrogations. But the guards do mention the monster's name to be Il-hwan Sung. Back with Jinwoo, he reassures Jaina that he'll be back in a week, piquing Jaina's interest as she accuses Jinwoo of running off with a lady friend. Having instead re-entered the S-Rank Demon Castle dungeon, Jinwoo thinks about how he was level 20 last time he entered, but now he's level 60, choosing to proceed deeper into the dungeon. Upon entering a hallway, Jinwoo is asked to gather 10,000 demon souls, declaring he'll decimate anything that prevents him from reaching his goal. Cutting to Jinho, he unveils his portfolio of dungeon raids, asking to personally take over his father's guild instead of his older brother, believing that Jinsung's methods of recruiting foreigners are too risky for their company. Jinho's father, Myung-han, locks on to Jinwoo, noting how Jinwoo had been present in news-heavy incidents along with being the leader of Jinho's recent dungeon raids. Myung-han questions if Jinho knows what he's doing, but Jinho reiterates he will be better suited to run their guild, prompting Myung-han to ask that Jinho secure Jinwoo as a member of their own guild before the White Tigers do. Following Jinwoo, he completes his quest, sad to see that he can't extract the souls of the slain demons due to their mana being contaminated. Upon receiving an entry permit to the next floor of the dungeon, Jinwoo begins making his way through the vast dungeon city towards the floor door, but gets tired calling for the leader of the Ice Bears to give him a ride. Seeing several monsters in his path, Jinwoo has his ride run them over, choosing to officially give the Ice Bear leader the new name of Tank. Following Cha, we see her flawlessly swimming to cool off, attracting the attention of other athletes, but Cha is more concerned about her recent chat with Choi. Cha had wondered why they kept their discovery of the flying ants a secret from the public, but Choi states the guild had ordered them to keep quiet, fearing mass panic would spread. With Jinwoo continuing to collect souls, he determines his current dungeon enemies to be around B rank. By using his ruler's hand to slay the intended targets, Jinwoo manages to proceed without issue, even leveling up his ruler's hand skill. As Jinwoo continues through the floors, he works through his resources, deducing that floor 100 will be his end goal, choosing to commit until his supplies run out, ultimately hitting his 10,000 soul target. Having made it to floor 50, Jinwoo runs into a demon boss, Avaricious Vulcan, lord of the lower floors. Seeing Vulcan's red title, Jinwoo calls his army to face off against Vulcan's minions. But first we cut to An and Heejin, who are disappointed to see Jinwoo is not home. An points out how suspicious it is for Jinwoo to suddenly disappear without any records of leaving the city. But at the same time, Jinwoo calls for his army to eradicate the enemy minions whilst he personally deals with Vulcan. With Igris taking charge, Jinwoo is glad he has more magical power to keep his shadow army alive, but gets annoyed seeing Vulcan not move an inch. Before Jinwoo can make the first move, Vulcan blinks before Jinwoo, choosing to swing his club towards Jinwoo, but luckily Jinwoo manages to evade. Retaliating with a punch of his own, Jinwoo sends Vulcan flying, but Vulcan suddenly roars, exuding the same skill as Cerberus. Seeing Vulcan increase his speed, Jinwoo cries for Iron to lend him his shield, choosing to stay on the defense as Vulcan unleashes a barrage of smashes. Freaked out by how such a large monster can be so quick, Jinwoo spots an opening, choosing to toss his shield as a distraction only to flank Vulcan from behind. Surprisingly, Vulcan reads Jinwoo's movements, intercepting Jinwoo with his club, but Jinwoo makes use of his ruler's hand to push himself away from the point of impact. Noting how Vulcan's eyes seem to be his only weak spot, Jinwoo chooses to flee all whilst racking his brain for a solution, only to spot something in the distance. Speeding towards his destination, Jinwoo runs up a building, luring Vulcan to smash into said building. Having obstructed his own vision, Vulcan leaves himself wide open for a lethal blow, allowing Jinwoo to finish the battle with a single slash. Being notified of Vulcan's defeat, Jinwoo receives the World Tree Fragment, making him a third of the way to his goal. Elsewhere, Dongsu begins interrogating Ilhwan, accusing him of being a beast. When Ilhwan offers to take a DNA test to prove he is a human, Dongsu changes topics, annoyed to hear Ilhwan ask about humanity's knowledge of dungeons and magical beasts. Ilhwan alludes to a powerful force that has recently awakened, a catastrophe that not even an army of hunters can take on. But Dongsu simply ignores Ilhwan's warning. Reading through Ilhwan's documents, Dongsu smirks, asking about Ilhwan's family. When Ilhwan mentions that his son is Sung Jinwoo, he demands to know why Dongsu is smirking, preparing to brawl as he hears Dongsu declare that Jinwoo is dead. Back with Jinwoo, his army marches towards an undead leader of the 75th floor, catching the boss off guard as Jinwoo sneaks up from behind and ends their battle. With Jinwoo notified of the Guide of Souls, Midas's death, we cut back to the aftermath of Dongsu and Ilhwan's battle. Agents on the scene know that S-Rank's fighting can change their surrounding landscape, but for this particular case, Dongsu had been massacred without him having any opening to retaliate. With Jinwoo realizing that he has finally run out of food, he states that he has 25 floors left to go, choosing to equip an earring he obtained on floor 50 and the necklace he got from floor 75. Seeing as his third slot is empty, Jinwoo wonders what floor 100 will give him. Taking out the sphere of avarice he acquired, Jinwoo says he personally can't use the sphere, but one of his shadow soldiers definitely can. Additionally, Jinwoo opens up a cursed loot box he received, surprised to receive another key, but all of its details are hidden from Jinwoo. Not too focused on this new key, Jinwoo states that he had acquired the World Tree Fragment on floor 50 and the Echo Forest Spring Water from floor 75, declaring that the next time he comes back he'll achieve his goal and ensure his mother wakes up. Leaving the dungeon for now, Jinwoo notes that he only needs the purified blood from the Demon Monarch. Happy he leveled up quite a bit as he ascended the floors, but Jinwoo knows publicly he is still an E rank. Seeing as he'll need to eventually tackle harder dungeons to level up, Jinwoo declares he'll reveal his true power and get his rank assessed. Cutting to the next day, where we follow Hyun. Having been assigned to look for new hunters they can recruit for the White Tiger Guild, Hyun suddenly phones Beck, uttering that Jinwoo has arrived at their facility to be evaluated. With Beck rushing over to meet them, we follow Jinwoo waiting to be assessed, overhearing some other hunters fearing they won't be a strong enough hunter to provide for their wife and child. The men also mention how a D rank or greater will get them scouted by most guilds, something Jinwoo smiles at, knowing he was one of the unlucky E ranks in the past. Finally called into the assessment room, Jinwoo is asked to place his hand on the machinery, confusing the examiner as she wonders why the machine is showing an error. When another examiner arrives to figure out the issue, they suddenly realize that Jinwoo can't be measured by normal machinery, deeming Jinwoo the 10th ever S rank in Korea. At the same time, Jinchul is seen updating Choi on their investigation into the winged ants, mentioning how results will take a little longer. Choi utters that he heard strange things have been happening recently, asking to know who the members who survived the Red Gate were, but Jinchul states he can't reveal such information. Hearing commotion nearby, Jinchul and Choi head towards the noise, cutting back to Jinwoo, who is told to come back in 3 days to receive a more proper examination. Off to the side, Hyun is amazed on was right about Jinwoo, all suddenly turning as Choi and Jinchul arrive. With a simple glance, Choi determines that Jinwoo is no ordinary hunter, arrogantly introducing himself as the CEO of the Hunters Guild, but Jinwoo could care less, leaving the scene. Choi is surprised someone would ignore him, apologizing for being so arrogant, but Choi and Jinchul realize that Jinwoo's presence had suddenly vanished. At that moment, Beck arrives, having barely missed Jinwoo, but Choi smirks, deducing that Jinwoo must be the man who cleared the red gate. Without batting an eye, Choi leaves as well, annoying Beck as Choi now has his sights on recruiting Jinwoo as well. That night, Jinwoo sits beside his mother, asking her to wait a little longer as he'll awaken her soon. Outside, Jinwoo runs into Jinchul, revealing that the surveillance team's sole job is to look over and protect hunters. But when dealing with S-ranks, their job gets complicated. Before Jinwoo can leave, Jinchul states that someone has been meaning to speak with Jinwoo, prompting Gunny to appear, asking to have a chat. Gunny states that Jinwoo is already officially S-rank, but they need the 3-day grace period before Jinwoo's reassessment to talk to him personally, mentioning how although the Hunter Association is well known, it personally doesn't have strong hunters, noting how Jinchul is one of their strongest but is still only an A rank. Gunny asks if Jinwoo would like to join them, offering Jinwoo a high-seated position in exchange, but Jinwoo wonders why Gunny would need to do this. Gunny mentions how the 5 great guilds are currently at a stalemate in terms of power and influence, but with Jinwoo now added to the picture, Jinwoo would surely tip the scales if he were to join any of the top 5 guilds. Gunny reveals if Jinwoo were to join the Hunter Association, there would still be balance, beckoning Jinwoo with a future promotion to chairman of the Hunter Association, but Jinwoo takes some time to think. Jinwoo knows that the offer Gunny is giving him will set him up for life, amazed that Gunny himself is also a retired S-rank, but was the very first S-rank to awaken in their country, being over 80 years old, but still is on par with Jinwoo's current strength. Taking a deep breath, Jinwoo refuses Gunny's offer, confusing Gunny as he wonders if Jinwoo wants more money. Jinwoo declares that he belongs in the dungeon, surprising Gunny as he knows Jinwoo isn't lying, suddenly feeling inspired to fight alongside Jinwoo if it weren't for his old body. With Jinwoo taking his leave, Gunny utters that an S-rank healer couldn't even heal his declining body, asking Jinchul to clear up his schedule as he wants to treasure the moment a little longer. The next day, we follow Dong-soo, who has finally awoken, demanding to know why the deputy chief is here. The deputy asks if Dong-soo considers Il-hwan a monster, something Dong-soo doesn't deny, prompting the deputy to leave, uttering that they're trying to track Il-hwan down. Now left alone, Dong-soo is reminded of Il-hwan's threat to never touch Jinwoo or his family, pissing Dong-soo off as he declares he'll get his revenge as long as he has an artifact. Apparently, artifacts are items that can't be conventionally crafted and can only be found in dungeons or online through auctions. At the same time, Jinwoo gets stressed seeing the absurd pricing of online auctions, stating that he needs the best gear before he takes on the remainder of the Demon Castle, wondering if he should sell his Sphere of Avarice. Jinwoo does note how most artifacts give a 20 to 30% increase, whereas the Sphere of Avarice doubles, a massive increase that will surely sell for a high price. Jinwoo knows that his past dungeon records would draw suspicion as to how an E-rank like him acquired such a valuable item, searching online only to see the Hunters Guild are recruiting minors. Cutting over to Jinchul, he shows off Jinwoo's profile for the past 4 years, impressing Gunny as Jinwoo has been providing for his family all whilst forced to endure the hardships of being an E-rank hunter. Jinchul adds that Jinwoo had recently joined the Hunters Guild, upsetting Gunny as he thought more highly of Jinwoo, but is surprised Jinwoo joined as a minor. Having arrived on site, Jinwoo is given the rundown by the mining team's boss, asking Jinwoo to relax as it's still his first day. Jinwoo knows that higher-tier dungeon raids consist of an initial strike team and a mining team, with the miners solely specializing on retrieving the dungeon's mana crystals. Peeking inside the dungeon, we see Choi and his strike team encountering strange monsters, forcing Choi to take center stage as he unleashes a devastating beam of fire. As Choi's fire weaves throughout the dungeon, it suddenly returns towards Choi, prompting his team's tanks to block the incoming fire. Seeing no use for the burn-up monster corpses, Choi and his party leave the dungeon for now, leaving the boss alive to keep the dungeon open for the miners. Jinwoo is amazed that Choi's strike team easily worked their way through an A-rank dungeon without casualties, suddenly spotting the vice captain beside Choi, Cha-hae the dancer. With Jinwoo assessing Cha's aura, Cha suddenly turns in Jinwoo's direction, having detected the presence of someone as powerful as Gunhee, but fails to identify who it was. As Jinwoo and the miners begin their work extracting and retrieving the dungeon's resources, Jinwoo gets curious as to what an A-rank dungeon boss looks like, sensing the boss's aura to be stronger than Vulcan and Métis from the Demon Castle. Seeing as this will be his first time facing off against an A-rank boss, Jinwoo gets annoyed hearing others gossiping about his E-rank. Nonetheless, Jinwoo decides to blend in for now, glaring at another worker when they try to boss him around. Working hard, Jinwoo terrifies other miners, all grateful that a hard-working man like Jinwoo is with them, all deciding to go on their lunch break whilst Jinwoo remains behind. Now alone, Jinwoo sprints towards the boss's location, encountering a set of gates that teases Jinwoo, eager to try out his new strength on the boss. As Jinwoo equips his daggers, Jinwoo suddenly hears Cha call out to him, demanding to know what Jinwoo is doing. Frozen in place, Jinwoo smirks, gripping his dagger, scolding himself for letting his greed cloud his judgment. Cha asks again what Jinwoo is doing, hearing that Jinwoo simply got lost and is part of the mining team, but Jinwoo is more impressed he couldn't detect Cha until she spoke up. Cha wonders if she was misseeing a weapon in Jinwoo's hand, but nonetheless allows Jinwoo to leave, reminding Jinwoo something horrible could have happened if he took on the boss alone. But as Jinwoo passes Cha, she orders Jinwoo to stop, realizing Jinwoo doesn't stink like other hunters do. Inspecting Jinwoo's ID, Cha makes note of Sung Jinwoo at E-rank, letting Jinwoo go as she wonders why Jinwoo smells so good. Having rejoined the other miners, they learn of Jinwoo meeting Cha, all jealous since Cha is someone to be admired from a distance, being young but constantly patrols around the boss room to keep miners safe. The miners also reveal that Cha is sensitive to the smells of hunters, hence the handkerchief she always carries, something Jinwoo brushes off once again as having the player title, curious as to what the title truly means. Having wrapped up before sundown, the boss thanks Jinwoo for working so hard, handing him his payment for a hard day's work. Seeing the opportunity, the boss asks if Jinwoo would permanently work for him, but Jinwoo rejects the offer, having only needed to make some quick cash. The boss still asks Jinwoo to work one more day, uttering that tomorrow they'll have to tackle an A-rank and a C-rank dungeon on the same day, amazing Jinwoo as most guilds couldn't organize such a thing. Seeing as Jinwoo has already made a decent chunk of change, he agrees to continue working, learning that there will be 2 separate strike teams for each dungeon. Pleased to hear he'll be paid extra for coming in. That night, Cha asks for more information on Jinwoo, surprised to hear that CEO Choi had also requested information on the E-rank hunter, but sadly the association keeps hunters' details private. Laying in her bed, Cha notes how strange it is for an E-rank to have the attention of Choi, coupled with the fact that Jinwoo is the first hunter that doesn't smell. The next day, Jinwoo heads to the first site, reminded of the warm feeling when greeting old friends. Heading straight to work, Jinwoo smashes out their mining task, stopping for a well-earned break as they need to prepare for the A-rank dungeon. The boss tries negotiating with Jinwoo once more, offering him 5 times the normal pay, but Jinwoo sadly refuses, all interrupted by Captain Sun Ki-hun of the strike team. Ki-hun reveals one of their carriers didn't show, asking for a miner to act as a carrier, stating that any volunteers will get hazard pay, but no one is willing to risk their life. The mining boss apologizes since miners aren't cut to enter A-rank dungeons, but suddenly Jinwoo volunteers, surprising Ki-hun as he immediately accepts Jinwoo upon hearing he is E-rank. Standing before the gate, Jinwoo is amazed that a secondary strike team houses 6 A ranks and 3 B ranks, a team with no S ranks but overall a force to be reckoned with. With the strike team entering the dungeon, Jinwoo immediately notices the low magic in the air, giving him a strange feeling. Seeing Jinwoo glancing around, Han Semi, an A-rank healer, reassures Jinwoo that Ki-hun is a very competent leader, someone who is fit to serve in Choi's place. Suddenly sensing something approaching, the entire strike team gets into formation without any orders, all bracing as several dungeon jackals attack. With the frontline hunters holding strong, the backline mages assist with taking down the jackals, weirded out to see C-rank jackals existing in an A-rank dungeon. Upon close inspection, Jinwoo notes the jackals have collars, all realizing that the jackals have been kept as hunting dogs. At that moment, a disgusting aura emerges from the dungeon's darkness, an army of high orcs. Seeing one of the orcs tossing its spear, Kahun rushes to block the projectile, but having deflected the spear, Kahun realizes his shield has been partially shattered by the impact. With the orcs rushing towards the gang, the tanker attempts to taunt the orcs, but the orcs simply shake off the ability, instead choosing to jump the backline first. Luckily, the strike team blows the creature back, terrified to see the orcs' high magic resistance. At the same time, A-rank Lee Bora casts a binding spell to buy them time, allowing another mage to summon some fire sprites to further stall the orcs. When A-rank CO Jaiwoo attempts to engage the orcs, she is easily knocked aside, forcing A-rank Gina to draw their attention. With semi-distracted with healing the tank, Kahun orders everyone to not break formation and instead to split into groups of 3, annoyed to see a single high orc can easily dismantle an A-rank hunter. Following a B rank in their party, the hunter ultimately loses an arm to the orcs, forcing Bora to cast another binding spell while Semi regenerates the B rank's lost limb. Sadly, an orc manages to break through Bora's binding spell, forcing Semi to give in. Out of nowhere, the orc before Semi is lifted into the air, revealed to be Jinwoo's doing as he had casted stealth along with Ruler's hand, tearing the orc apart with his sheer strength. At the same time, Kahun notices the orcs slowing down, inspiring the strike team to begin dismantling the orcs. But in the shadows, Jinwoo is seen floating through the battlefield, assisting the strike team by adding several cuts and incisions to weaken the orcs enough for the strike team to finish them off. With Kahun taking on the final orc, he ends the brawl, reporting that no one had passed luckily. After the battle, Semi asks if Kahun found anything strange during the fight, both agreeing that the orcs acted sluggish out of nowhere. With Gina and Bora both confirming that their magic doesn't weaken enemies, Bora is seen glaring at Jinwoo, revealing that she had detected Jinwoo was using stealth. But, seeing as Jinwoo was helping them, she chooses not to reveal Jinwoo's secret. Assessing the situation, the party asks for Kahun to retreat for now, knowing how much Kahun wants his first captain raid to go. But even Kahun knows the best thing to do is retreat, something the others respect. Returning to the portal, the gang are mortified to see a powerful barrier blocking their exit, prompting Bora to begin dispelling the magic. At that moment, a potent aura can be detected deeper within the dungeon, all knowing that it belongs to a powerful dungeon boss. With the party's 3 mages rushing to dispel the barrier, they all begin coughing up blood as Bora reveals the barrier spell is cursed magic and would require holy magic to dispel. Turning around, the gang spots an even greater horde of high orcs standing in wait. Seeing a high orc approaching them, Kahun matches its movements, courageously standing before the orc as the orc roars. Beginning to act strange, the orc twitches, suddenly speaking human language as it transmits the dungeon boss's words, introducing themselves as Kargalgan. With Kahun confirming that Kargalgan is the one who placed the curse barrier and is the strongest in the dungeon, Kargalgan asks if the gang would like to meet him or if they'll be slaughtered where they stand. Seeing no other option, Kahun states they'll meet Kargalgan, prompting the orcs to turn and begin leaving. Staying back for a bit, Kahun states that they'll all strike the dungeon boss the moment they see it, asking Jinwoo to flee as their main objective is to ensure the orcs don't leave this dungeon. Semi takes the chance to hand Jinwoo her will, asking Jinwoo to give it to her family when she passes, but Jinwoo can't help but feel the familiar despair he once felt in the double dungeon. Outside the gate, Cha is seen looking around for Jinwoo, learning from the mining boss that Jinwoo had taken part as a carrier for the strike team today. With the gang guided into a massive throne room, they all stiffen up seeing the hundreds of high orcs crowded around them. Standing before Kargalgan, The gang spot 4 other orcs next to Calvigan, watching as Calvigan shows off a disgusting grin, greeting the human worms before it. Back outside the gate, Chow wonders why an E-rank like Jinwoo is risking his life as a porter, but having remembered Jinwoo standing before the boss room yesterday, Chow reasons she should check things inside. Needing a weapon, Chow refuses to bring pickaxe, seeing as it'll be useless, only to embarrassingly accept the weapon, seeing as it's better than nothing. Cutting to Jinwoo, he notices the swarm of orcs roaring gleefully, something that terrifies the strike team, as these orcs could cause massive issues if let outside the dungeon. The gang also take note of the 4 menacing orcs beside the boss, all watching as Calvigan silences the room with a wave of his hand, reminding Cahun that their #1 priority is to close the gate no matter what. Speaking up, Calvigan asks if the humans fear it, emitting a potent aura that terrifies the strike team, all trembling at the monster before them. Cahun demands to know why Calvigan wanted to see them, all mortified upon hearing that Calvigan plans to play with them, wanting to torture them slowly to entertain his orc army. Pissed, Cahun knows that they'll be discarded, wanting to at least go down fighting, but Calvigan spots something unique about Jinwoo. Rallying the team, Cahun orders his team to attack Calvigan, but upon seeing everyone frozen in fear, Cahun chooses to rush the boss himself. Sadly, Calvigan casts him a protection, easily halting Cahun's advances, only to cast gravitational magic on Cahun. With a wave of his finger, Calvigan sends Cahun flying into the ceiling, only to smash him into the ground, all whilst the gang helplessly watches. Having seen enough, Jinwoo catches Cahun, placing him down gently, only to offer to help. Sensing an orc prepare to toss its axe at him from behind, Jinwoo makes use of his ruler's hand to send the orc flying into the ceiling, only to ask that Cahun relinquish the dungeon to him, something Cahun has no choice but to do. Calvigan is pissed he's being ignored, attempting to scare Jinwoo with his aura, but Jinwoo simply flexes his own strength, calling for his shadow army to appear. With Jinwoo declaring he'll slay Calvigan, we cut outside where Jinchul has arrived on the scene, wanting to investigate the reason Jinwoo had chosen to become a miner for 2 days. Jinchul asks the miners on the scene where Jinwoo is, noticing another miner is frightened of Jinwoo, wondering what Jinwoo did to the man. Regardless, Jinchul calms everyone down by asking them to watch the news tomorrow, stating that it'll explain the strange air around Sung Jinwoo. Before Jinchul enters the gate, he hears that Cha is also in the dungeon, suddenly sensing a dense power appear from the dungeon, ordering his men to assess the magic power of the dungeon. Having entered the dungeon, Cha comes upon the slain orcs, getting serious as she too had sensed the dungeon boss's aura. Back with Jinwoo, he is mocked by Calvigan for having such weak soldiers, but Jinwoo warns Calvigan to not underestimate him, immediately unveiling his monarch's domain. Having obtained the skill after reaching floor 70 in the Demon Castle, Jinwoo empowers his shadow army, terrifying the strike team as they wonder if Jinwoo is human. As Calvigan orders his army to attack, Iron is seen taunting the orcs, but when the taunt skill doesn't work, Iron spins his axe, slashing and slaying the approaching orcs. At the same time, Igris shreds the orcs rushing him, followed by Jinwoo monstrously carving and hacking away at the orc swarm. Attack patterns the strike team notes resembles Cha's. Assessing the situation, Jinwoo knows that his shadow infantry are around B rank, meaning they perish 4 to 5 times before they can slay a single orc. But before Jinwoo can think of a way to make his soldiers stronger, Calvigan casts him of the Fire Dragon, eradicating a fraction of Jinwoo's army. Seeing Calvigan acting almighty, Jinwoo simply resurrects his fallen army, watching as Calvigan uses his barrier spell to blow Jinwoo back, following up by casting simultaneous gravity and fire spells to drain Jinwoo's mana. As the strike team runs for cover, Jinwoo realizes that Calvigan is keeping him at a distance with his long-range magic, but outside the gate we see Jinchul order for backup upon learning that the dungeon gate is close to an S-rank dungeon rather than an A rank. Seeing Calvigan already declaring that he's won, Jinwoo watches as his mana bar is drained, but Jinwoo simply refuels with a mana potion, showing off his skills as a necromancer as he revives the slain orcs, adding them to his shadow army. Hearing Jinwoo declaring himself as a necromancer, Calvigan begins to bug out, attempting to utter some words, but the voice in his head reminds him to only hunt down humans and do nothing else. Listening to the voice, Calvigan orders his 4 menacing-looking orc captains to join the battle. Cutting over to Choi, he receives news of the mistaken S-rank dungeon assigned to Kahun. Fearing that a dungeon break will cause a similar scene to the dungeon break on Jeju Island, Choi asks for all A-rank and above hunters to gather, fearing that he'll have to swallow his pride and ask for help from neighboring guilds. Back in the dungeon, Iron is seen taking on one of the orc captains, easily decapitating it. Following up, Igris chooses to take on 2 of the orc captains, managing to take one out by tossing away his blade, easily retrieving it with his ruler's hand, distracting the second captain only to allow Tank to come in for a sneak attack. Jinwoo is amazed the tides are turning in his favor, inspiring the strike team to want to help out, but instantly, the strike members are paralyzed by Calvigan, who asks that outsiders not interfere. Having left his throne, Calvigan turns his sights onto Jinwoo, casting several curses onto Jinwoo, but out of nowhere the curses vanish, revealed to be Jinwoo's passive skill, health and longevity that immediately cleanses all debuffs. As Jinwoo summons 3 shadow mages, Calvigan erects a barrier to block the mage's fireball, but having given one of the mages the Sphere of Avarice, the mage's spell is enhanced, ultimately managing to tear through Calvigan's powerful shield. Right on cue, Chao arrives, shocked to see so many summons facing off against the orcs, relieved to see the strike team hasn't suffered any casualties. Pissed, Calvigan casts several enhancement spells to enlarge his size and strength, attempting to crush Jinwoo like a bug, but Jinwoo simply blinks away, watching as Calvigan casts another fire spell. Upon seeing Jinwoo unfazed, Calvigan duplicates his incantation, casting hundreds of fire spells that incinerate the surrounding battlefield, asking how scared Jinwoo is. Using the chaos as an opening, Jinwoo sneaks in from behind, plunging his dagger into one of Calvigan's eyes, reminding Calvigan that his huge size is a weakness and that mages should remain behind their guards. Enraged, Calvigan smothers the battlefield with fire and lava, forcing Jinwoo to jump around the imploding floor tiles, only to toss 2 daggers to disrupt Calvigan's cast. Making use of his ruler's hand, Jinwoo snatches a nearby chain, using it to tie up Calvigan, all whilst Jinchul and his surveillance team arrive. Cha takes the chance to report that Jinwoo seems to have everything under control, something that baffles Jinchul and Cha as they witness Jinwoo summoning the orc captains as his own soldiers. Towering over Calvigan, Jinwoo declares the fight to be over, but refusing to give in, Calvigan attacks his former captains, only to be brought down by their overwhelming strength. As Jinwoo is notified of Calvigan's defeat, he feels bad taking all the loot, but first rushes to shadow extract Calvigan's corpse. Ordering the former boss to arise, Jinwoo gives Calvigan the new name of Kiba, Japanese for Tusk, only to be shot. Kiba is Elite Knight rank due to Kiba being a boss of an A-rank dungeon. Dispersing his shadows, Jinwoo suddenly realizes that Jinchul is here, watching as Jinchul and the surveillance team suddenly surround him, only to ask the others to keep what they saw here private. Jinchul does admit that Jinwoo is on par with an S-rank, offering to escort Jinwoo safely away, but Kahun stops them. Kahun knows he shouldn't pry into Jinwoo's life, so the strike team all take the chance to thank Jinwoo for saving their lives, reminding Jinwoo that he can return her will. As Jinwoo leaves, Cha fails to speak with Jinwoo, embarrassed that Jinwoo may think she is a weirdo having entered the dungeon with a pickaxe. Later that day, Kahun reports to Choi his findings, shocking Choi as he hears Jinwoo can control an army, moves like an assassin, and can control dead magic beasts. Choi asks Kahun who he thinks is stronger between Jinwoo and Choi himself, but Kahun points out that Choi can't take on an A-rank dungeon all by himself, something Jinwoo has shown he can easily do. Following Jinwoo, he's seen meeting up with Jinho, asking about how his guild master title is doing along with what Jinho's father thinks of it. Elsewhere, we see news reporters declaring that actor Lee Min-sung has recently awakened as well, smugly waiting for his skills to be evaluated as he enjoys all the attention.